Good afternoon and welcome to the Town of Surf City Work Session Agenda. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to call on Trudy Solomon to lead us in our invocation, and John Koloski will lead us in our pledge. If you would, please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we are so blessed and thankful for every person you brought here tonight. We pray that there are people who are also watching online who will see this message, these minutes, these proceedings in the next day or two as they choose to watch online. But you brought a group of people here tonight because we have a heart for this town. And Lord, this town, you created everything that's here. And we want to ask your providence upon it. We want to ask your blessings. Lord, we call upon the wisdom and discernment that we need. We're looking for the hope and prosperity in our town. We're looking for our townspeople to work together, be neighborly, be loving, be kind, be full of grace and mercy. So as we proceed with our agenda items tonight, help us to look at each item carefully, help us to make comments that benefit the public, help us to make decisions that further our town for the good of all. Lord, we ask blessings upon our first responders, our firemen, our people, our safety, our police people, and everything, all the people who work so hard to take care of our town. Lord, the town's workers who are part of this office and other buildings, they don't get the credit that they really probably deserve. There's so many things that we get distracted by, but let's just praise them for taking care of us and keeping us safe and keeping our city healthy. We ask these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
For tonight's pledge, because it's Memorial Day weekend, I'd like us to honor and remember the fellows that went ahead before us and enables us to do this, where in some countries you can't. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, thank you for coming tonight. At this time, we have the agenda presented in front of us.
Madam Mayor, before we adopt the agenda, I'd like to add an item if I can, if this is the appropriate time. I'd like to make a motion that we add the budget survey discussion as item 1B.
We have a motion to add the survey discussion as item 1B. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
I'd like to offer an
I have a
amendment.
motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'd like to offer an amendment to the motion to have the public comments immediately following the 1A presentation from Mr. Brewer.
I think there's a motion and second on the table. You can do a second motion after this one is voted on, but that's fine.
I have a motion and a second to add the survey discussion as item 1B. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries to add the survey discussion as item 1B. At this time, Andy Pleil has made a motion to amend the agenda to add,
Either add or perhaps even just move the public comment to after the presentation from Mr. Brewer on the responses to the survey. I think that might make it more efficient in that many questions, or some of the questions at least, will have already been answered.
so there is a motion to add the public comment to after the survey budget. Is there a second? There is not a second. All in favor?
Motion.
There's
motion dies.
motion dies right there. So we will move forward. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this time, we have public comments, and Carla Citarelli will call anyone that has signed up for public comments to speak for 3 minutes.
I apologize, I can't read the first name, but it's 17 Maritime Drive.
Sure.
Pirjo Vima, 17 Maritime Drive. I would like to know why are you transferring to another fund over 3 million, and especially how are you planning to use the money? I think that
Can you pull the mic down, please?
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so especially how are you plan to use the over 3 million? I think I saw it was for year 25-26 budget. That means that it's for this year, and there's only a little bit over a month left in this year's budget. So I would think you would already know how you plan to use the money. And I got the impression that last fall it was suggested that you transfer the money from that fund so you don't have to raise property taxes 30%. And it was not allowed last fall. And you had to raise the property taxes 30% in order to get 2 million, a little bit over 2 million. And now you are just adding 25-26 budget over 3 million to another fund that seems to be easier money to use. So I think the people who own property here and pay property taxes should know how this money will be used. And it just surprised me that you can suddenly make this move. So I assume that you already know how you're planning to use the money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rita Bongarden.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank everybody for their hard work on this budget, because I know it's difficult, and you're really trying hard to help us residents and all the other folks in the community. So I wanted to really thank you. I completed an analysis, a line-by-line analysis of the budget, and I sent my analysis to the council and Mr. Bauer, and I received replies from Councilman Pleil and Mayor Batts, Trudy Solomon, and of course Mr. Bauer. So I appreciate that you did that. But I do have some clarifying questions that I'd like to ask now. So the first one is, this is for the accommodation tax. I want to know, how do we monitor homes that are being rented and not paying the accommodation tax? Then I want to know is, why do office workers need uniforms? The third one is, why are taxpayers paying for medical insurance for council members? Fourth question is, what land has been sold this year by the town? What was the land used for? And who was the realtor who was helped with that purchase? Then we want to know, why do permanent residents paying for rollback service for sanitation when the general rollback for their own trash cans are done by them, the residents, and it's only the renters who probably need to be thinking about that tax? And then again, why do we have a line item for $13,800 for employee appreciation? The other thing I'd like to state is that in many cases, tourists pay for services that they specialize taxes rather than residents paying for them. So why are the residents paying for this line item? Again, I really want to thank all of you. I know it's not easy, and I think that you have a really hard job. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike McCusker?
Mike McCusker, 1016 South Topsail Drive. Again, budgets are tough and it hurts. And if it doesn't hurt, you're not doing your job. So I know how all that goes. I've run multi-million-dollar budgets in previous life. We ask you to make sure you scrub the budget, pull your belts tight in this time of years that we were seeing very tight for us as citizens, because we have not received any gains from these taxes that we're seeing when it comes to the reevaluations. So we don't want our wallets being taxed for money we don't have. So a few things to think about. What is critical and essential to town operations? And make sure you understand what does that mean to you and to us, critical and essential, versus what's maintaining service levels and support priority initiatives. That's from the budget message. The MUP, $500,000. If it's not paid for by citizen taxes and you get it from somewhere else, fine. But that's not critical and essential. A bus for $7,500. I see lots of buses up and down the streets and the roads from cities, the high schools and all that aren't air conditioned. Just make sure if we have to get one, make sure it's not a Taj Mahal bus in the process. Memberships, $40,000 across the board. If memberships are for individuals and they're not towards divisions or whatever you call organizations, then they should be paid for by individuals, as well as certificates, just like education, because they can leave and we don't benefit. Employee Appreciation Day, $10,200 some odd dollars, which someone else has already mentioned. I run large units, which it hasn't cost a thing, so I think it's very exorbitant in the process. Bank fees. We're paying huge amounts of dollars in bank fees. Whoever is dealing with our banks around here and allowing them to charge us with all the money you're putting into our city, we're being ripped off, and that's not good. Advertising, $10,000. $74,930. We understand this is a tourism town, but we also see the issues of all the traffic and everything else, and do we have to continue to spend that amount of money on tourism across the board? Athletic camps and recreation programs. Make sure they are making money for us, the citizens. If we're losing money, all that needs to be looked at and scrubbed. Uniforms. 19 different departments, $123,499 across the board. Not required. Firing range, $30,000. Dues and subscriptions, $193,267. Training across the board, over thousands of dollars. Christmas decorations for $16,000 and then $52,425, exorbitant. Professional service, $500,000. Miscellaneous, $20,000. Supplies, $120,000. A memorial bench, recreation, $10,000. Again, we ask, pull the belt tight, make it work. Thank you very much. I know it's hard.
Renee Rhodes?
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm Renee Rhodes. I live at 7019 7th Street. So I understand that the meeting times are on tonight's agenda, and I would respectfully ask that you consider changing the meeting times back to what they were previously. I believe that the attendance records will show that the attendance has not improved versus the attendance on the earlier meeting times. I would like to think that town staff would enjoy the evening times at home with their family versus being pulled away at least twice per month. I would also like to thank Kyle Brewer and the entire town staff for what you have done to be proactive and concerned about the future needs of our town. I am appreciative of the financial situation that the town is in. Unlike my hometown of Benson, North Carolina, which is currently in a $3 million deficit. This situation is splitting the town and causing many critical employees that have been there many years to face losing their jobs. So I just want to say thank you, you are appreciated, and keep doing what you do.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Goddard?
Hi, good evening. Jacqueline Goddard, 9016 West 9th Street, Surf City. I'm going to be speaking quickly because of the time limit. First, I'd just like to say that I am against. I wanted to know why the money that's now being planned to be shifted into the CIP fund and also the police building, why we didn't have access to it last year why we didn't have access to it last year in order to reduce taxes, and now it's being spent. I know it's going to be discussed later, but comments are now. So I am against it, and I want to know why tax residents if the money is available. Use it for expenses. Okay, fund balances. We had $16 million in the general fund last year. There is now $19 million in the general fund that is used. Supposedly, we're saving it for this tremendous hurricane that will come eventually. But residents need to know, is $19 million, is $16 million, is $50 million enough? We need a yardstick, a ruler, to assess the necessity and the amount of the fund. I would like to request a scientific and or actuarial study to determine what the likelihood of a massive hurricane will be in the next 1, 5, 10, 20 years, and what it would be projected to cost. If we as residents know we potentially have X costs that we'll have to save for, then we can be for the general fund. As of right now, I would say more than 3/4 of the citizens of this city are against having such a large general fund. For those of us here in the residence, I looked at the financial statements that were posted, thank you, on the website, and in it I learned that we made, as a city, $2.6 million in services for water, sewer, etc. And that is, we charged residents and businesses $2.6 million more than it costs to provide those services. So to me, as a resident, that's a tax. I just had to pay another tax besides my property tax. I just want to point that out. The last thing I wanted to say is budget results. Again, looking at our financial statements, the budget was, for the general fund, showed a surplus of $4 million. In other words, we budgeted wrong. And we underestimated our revenues, and we overestimated our expenses. So the budget was wrong, and it was wrong for also the accommodation fund. And my concern, and I think one of our citizens brought up last time, is that the budgets were well off of what they should have been in 25. What is the change for the 26 plan that can make it more accurate? And if we don't have a change this year, can we not look at, as one of the previous citizens said in the last meeting, outside expertise to help us with this, because we can all improve. Thank you for your time.
Doug West.
Doug.
Doug West.
Doug West, I live at 918 Broadway Street, and first off, I want to thank you for what you do. Also, I want to thank you for the transparency and stuff that you have tried to provide. I know it's hard. I know you can't get all the discussions and history and everything in transparency, so you never will, but I know you're trying, so thank you for that. And my big thing is I hope, as I mentioned before, is I want to see the same thing done all the time. And sometimes we look at the budget and we see it, and it's like next year we're adding more percent. So I'm hoping at some point in time, as you said, that we look deeper in each department and really cut budgets. One time we had to create a cybersecurity area, and we don't get rid of people where I worked. And we had to literally lay 10 or 12 people off that were underperforming or whatever to bring in positions for cybersecurity. And all of a sudden, then we are a cybersecurity place, or is now. But those hard decisions had to be made at a bottom line level. So I hope you guys give some consideration to that. Another thing, I know there was an email yesterday or Facebook that went out that had some questions, and Andy, you sent it out, and I appreciate it, because those are hard questions to ask. You know, people looking at, I wish all you guys would do that. And I'm sure, Andy, you drove me crazy sometimes with questions, so I'm sure you're driving them crazy. But that being said, those kind of questions do need to be asked. But one of them was the reserve, as you mentioned. And that's something that is surprising me because I've always thought it was too high, not knowing anything about reserves. I'm not an expert on reserves, but last year I knew we couldn't touch it because of taxes. And all of a sudden tonight, and you brought it up, tonight I've got an agenda item where funds are being moved from that. And I don't know how funds can be removed from reserve, but I did try to, I did try to use IA, which I don't use a whole lot, but I asked about reserves. Surf City's reserve funds are relatively high compared to every or other North Carolina beach towns. Then I asked, well, what beach towns have high reserves? And it said, town of Ballhead, town of Duck, town of Russell Beach. And I said, well, how does Surf City compare to theirs? And Surf City is notably larger than those cities are. So it's just not me. IA has said how much. So I know, I mean, I've been through 3 hurricanes, my family here, so I understand the importance of it. But the amount of it and the fact that we opened a door now that we can move money out of that reserve, or is there line items we can? If that's the case, let's take $3 million out, buy the fire truck, not pay interest on the fire truck. I mean, there's questions like that we can do. But if you open the door to move the reserve money out, but again, I see it was 100% over reserved, and now it's like 85% or something like that. I think that's too much, not knowing anything about it. But that being said, let's save the taxpayers some money and use that money on something else and do a deeper dive in the departments and try to find some savings there. And I just saved 20 minutes. So, thank you, guys.
AJ Hemphill?
Albert Hemphill, 811B South Shore. My friends call me AJ. Members of the council, my concern has been that to date on the presentation on the budget has been very, very long on process and short on fund-by-fund substance. Process matters, but it doesn't tell us what we're actually buying, nor does it tell us what costs to deliver and what each fund is fiscally stable of providing. A budget presentation should clearly answer 3 questions. What future obligations it creates. Right now, I don't think I've got enough clarity to say I concur that the funding level would answer those questions confidently. For Fund 10, we need to understand what is driving the general fund. What are the recurring commitments that are being added? What's deferred? And what does the reserve outlook look like? For Fund 21, we need a plain explanation of how accommodation tax dollars are being used and whether they're being used properly. For water, sewer, and stormwater, we need to know whether the rates and fees are covering operations, reserves, and the debt service and capital replacement, and whether we are deferring the problem. And for beach renourishment, we need to see the full cost, the timing, the funding source, and the project cycle. This council should not be asked to act upon a budget without clear fund level picture of the service, the impacts and the reserve impacts, and the future obligations. I would ask that staff reframe the presentations we've seen to date around the funds themselves and not just the process used to assemble them. So 3 questions that I put before you. What has changed in each fund and why? Are restricted and enterprise funds structurally balanced and properly funded? And what recurring costs and deferred obligations in this budget are creating a problem for the future years? On top of that, in the minute I've got left, I wrote a memo to you folks about the election. Hugh invited me to coffee, and I appreciate that. Trudy responded and said she'd get back to me. Andy and I had a conversation. The rest of y'all have never answered, and I have not received anything, even though I specifically asked that you would respond to me. This lays out a problem we have. We lay out issues before you, and we don't hear an answer. I'd love to have coffee with you, Hugh and Trudy. I look forward to hearing from you. Andy, I appreciate our conversations to date. But Mayor, John, Alicia, I look forward to talking to y'all, and we have not had that conversation. You owe it to us, and you owe it to these people. So we need a town hall forum where we can engage with you and y'all can answer. Please consider that. And in the time I've got left, You're doing a good job, Kyle. I appreciate you as a civil servant. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carla. All right, we'll move forward to item number 1 on the agenda, which is the facilities expansion project update. And Kyle Brewer will present, DR.
Mr. Bob Rawson with DR Reynolds, and Nate Stroven, also with DR Reynolds. DR Reynolds is our contractor working on both the public utilities expansion and Station 25 expansion projects. So turn it over to you.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing us to be back here again. We are closing in on the completion of 2 of the projects, one getting ready to kick off and commence. We are happy to say in this budget time that we are not here to ask for more money for those projects. We are under budget on the Station 25, approximately $50,000 under budget, and we are nearly complete. We were able to take some monies and do a couple extra things on the project that does not cost any more to the town than what was initially slated. So on the project up at the public utilities, as you can see, it's coming along nicely, and it is well under budget. We've been maintaining around $500,000 under budget. So to let you know on that, Nate is here. He is the project manager, worrying about the schedule and getting you done and getting you moved in.
Mayor, Council. Public Utilities Building, we are working towards placing asphalt and fencing next week, also exterior paint. We didn't pick a great week to do it with some rain possibly coming in, but we're going to keep pushing forward on that. We got water to the building today. We've had HVAC and electrical to the building for weeks, so we're still looking at a mid-June finish date on that. Station 25, we've got some painting done, and I hope that you've seen the sign that was put on the side of the building today. And if you haven't seen it, please go take a look. It looks great. On that project, I'm looking at a little bit more paint on that project. We've got some pervious concrete going in behind the building for the trucks to pull around. And the only other thing we're really waiting for on that job is your generator. And due to some world issues, there's a little bit of a delay on that. But we're still looking at a mid-June timeframe to place that generator for the building.
Right, that's.
Mayor, if I
Yes,
may,
sir.
thank you. And I just wanted to expand upon the items at Station 25. And Mr. Stroven had mentioned them, interior paint. So they are painting the steel within the building. They had noticed a little bit of rust in there. Questioned, is this structural issues? Response was it certainly can be in the future. So we did pull the trigger on that. And then the pervious concrete is a requirement of the town ordinance. And that is why we had to do a modification as opposed, it was going to be asphalt, but we had to peel it back to the pervious so we can meet our 40% built upon area threshold. So just wanted to give you that.
Typically, as a company, we paint all steel that we put up anyway, just for that corrosion or rust resistance. And you're showing some rust on it. Let's get some paint on it. Let's get it covered up and get you a few more years out of the building.
And the question of, because again, I do look at these things, and is it something that we have to do today? Can we defer it? And the decision was made to get it done right now. We have crews mobilized, and in the long run, we will most likely save money on that. So just wanted to point that out.
An outstanding job.
We are submitted we're waiting on the state to get back to us to start grading on the 3 warehouse buildings in the back of the pub. So that's,
You
as
council
soon as
have
they
any
give us
questions?
the go, we're ready to go.
Good.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to item number 2, and it's
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, I'm sorry, 1B. Or DR Reynolds, please come back.
No, actually, it's more for Ms. Moore. The, any cost savings goes back then to the reserve, or the capital
We're
fund?
good. Thank you.
The capital fund, and then we can use it to help pay for buildings 2 through 4? Is that?
Oh, well, yes, in the enterprise fund, yes.
Right.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
yeah, we could
Thank
be
you.
able to I'd have to ask Melissa. It's probably set up all under a same project. So it'll just remain in that project. And then once all of it is completed, anything residual can be pulled back. But as a reminder, there's a borrowing on that or loan. So essentially, just go to loan, most likely loan
so debt
proceeds.
service.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Cal.
All right, Miss Melissa, actually Cal Brewer. Item 1B is going to be the survey discussion questions.
Yeah, so really the item is meant to be open for budget discussion for council. I am going to go over some items based on questions, comments that were provided by our residents. But then after that, I certainly will turn it over to council. And I did try to take note of some of the items to address specifically if I don't cover it in the general overview of items. First and foremost, I'd just like to say thank you for submitting the questions, comments, et cetera, through that survey process. We had about 30 surveys come in, so I certainly do appreciate that. There's a couple things I just wanted to address before I get into some of the generalized or consistent questions and comments that we did receive. The first one is, can the overall budget be published with more detail to help explain each line item? Yes, it can be. The way that the process is run internally is that when department heads submit their budgets, we do have notes within our system, and department heads are putting the notes into those line items to justify or try to justify what their requests are. So, for example, if you're talking about dues and subscriptions, well, the fire department is going to say, okay, these are the entities in which we pay dues to, these are the entities in which we pay subscriptions to, can be for a slew of services. That then gets translated back over to council, and during our March departmental presentations, each one of those line items are being discussed and information is being provided. What I am hearing and what I am seeing is that when we publish the line item budget for the public consumption, and once again, that the prior iteration is for public consumption, that is a line item with numbers that explain what prior year revenues were, prior year expenditures, what was budgeted, what was spent, but does not give that detail. Next year, the process will change. I will make sure that the detail is in the line item. The other improvement that I feel is necessary is a simple title sheet. The funds and line items can have basic descriptions so that the public can understand what dues and subscriptions are, what travel and training goes towards, so that can be categorized out based on common departmental line items. Most departments have consistent line items. Some departments have some specialized things, but overall, in general, that can be provided, and I just wanted to make that statement. The second thing I just wanted to address real quick was, will the town continue to seek ways to improve the process? Absolutely. I think that over the years, it has evolved, certainly since 2020. This budget process, there is a ton of meetings that occur. The public is always available to those meetings. But can processes be improved? Absolutely. Is there any concern of embracing change of process? Absolutely not. That is not the way that I operate things, and department heads would certainly attest to that. So those are the two first things that I wanted to mention before I get into a little bit more detail on some commonalities of the questions. I can't go through every single question that was submitted. However, I am still working as diligently as I can to get individual responses to those that submitted their questions, and I can find an email address for them. So if you submitted questions and I haven't responded, email me and I'll make sure that I get that to you, because I could be missing an email. So number one, going into process, because I just feel like it is important, but building the budget, determine what our total expenditures are. That happens starting in January, discussing what priorities are, and then moves into March where department heads are actually submitting their budgets. Expenditures are derived by strategic plan priorities, service level needs, growth, and seasonal demand. I mean, those are the basic functions of that. The second thing is to identify and project all non-property tax revenues. So that's sales tax, permits, fees, state and federal funding, other revenues like interest earned on investments. The town invests money back into the market to earn investment income. And then the third thing is the general fund adjustments and cost control. Staff reduces costs by identifying operational efficiencies, delay or reduce expenditures, and adjust to help minimize impact on the taxpayer. The first round of that occurs with our finance officer and myself. We go through and we make cuts. I heard a comment about a firing range. That was already cut. The second process of this is then we start talking to council. And this year we had a committee made up of the mayor, Councilman Koloski, and Councilman Pleil. We meet, we go over these expenditure requests. They have the opportunity to ask the questions. We provide responses. If there's areas to cut, make modifications, that is where that is being done. I assure you that there is additional review and scrutiny back on the line item budgets. And then we calculate the funding gap. What is the property tax revenue required to balance a budget? We are required by law to submit a balanced budget. Revenues equal expenditures, et cetera. So with that being said, the budget, again, I'm just wanting to go over this, is balanced based on the manager's submittal to council. Appropriations are allocated among the following funds. The general fund, that's Fund 10. General fund is basically made up of ad valorem property tax, sales tax, and then some fees, revenues that are brought in by general fund departments, not water, not sewer, not stormwater, et cetera. That's what makes up the general fund. Capital improvement fund at $1.268 million. This is derived based on capital improvement needs that have been identified, prioritized, and determined that they are a need for the upcoming budget year. Accommodations tax fund, $3,006,609. Accommodations tax, again, I'll get into this a little bit more, so I might repeat myself, but I apologize in advance, is generated through short-term rentals. That's people renting out beach houses, hotel, motel rooms, et cetera. And I'll get to the question about accommodations tax when I get to that section. Your water enterprise fund at $4 million, sewer enterprise fund at $6.7 million, and stormwater enterprise fund at $541,000. These are proprietary funds. These are business-like operations of the town. You pay a fee for water. That fee has to stay within the water department. It does not go into the overall general fund. It has to stay there. Anything residual, fees are based on what is necessary to run operations as well as to fund future capital projects. And then beach nourishment fund at $4.963 million. That is generated based off of a 3-tier funding situation. Ad valorem tax, net revenues from paid parking, and accommodations tax. So immediately, right off the top half of the accommodations tax immediately goes to beach nourishment. And I'll get into beach nourishment in a little bit, but just wanted to give those explanations. So the general budget information is sort of pulled from the budget message, but a little bit further explanation is that as we go through reval, Pender and Onslow County determines which property value assessment will be used each year. And the town does not have a choice in that decision. When Pender County says that they are going to do a reval, that's their decision. We're just along for the ride. Same thing with Onslow County. We're just along for the ride. The municipality takes the new values and takes that into account. The council does not have the authority to change individual property values, as that, again, responsibility belongs to the county. That's the appeal process. So Pender County was here yesterday for several hours in person doing appeals. You can do these online as well. But when they go through the reval process, they're either internally or hiring contractors. Again, that's their decision. They are making those determinations on value of the property. That is not what the town is doing. In years when property values are reassessed, the town is required to present a revenue-neutral tax rate. By law, we have to publish that. To calculate the revenue-neutral tax rate, the budget officer shall first determine a rate that would produce revenues equal to those produced for the current fiscal year, and then increase the rate by a growth factor equal to the average annual percentage increase in the tax base due to improvements since the last general reappraisal. The town is not required to adopt the revenue-neutral tax rate. It is just required to present that back to the public. The council still has the ability to choose to set the rate higher or lower as needed to fund services and meet the requirements of the balanced budget. So that revenue-neutral tax rate is basically a statutory calculation in which we have to do and present back to the public. This is a unique year. I mean, I think it would be unique with just one reval occurring. We got two. We got some other external factors that are occurring. The tax rate was presented and is based on the two different scenarios, each determined on the county revaluation process. If the county revaluation goes forward, the proposed tax rate will be reduced from 53 cents per $100 to 26 cents per $100 evaluation. That is the manager's recommendation. If the revaluation process does not get implemented, the recommended tax rate will be reduced from 53 cents to 48.5 cents. Once again, that's the manager's recommendation. Scenario one, once again, the first scenario being explained is where the revals are going through as scheduled. So Pender and Onslow complete the revals, the new values are calculated to determine a tax rate and the expenditure. Calculated revenue neutral tax rate is 29.26 cents or 0.2926. The recommended tax rate again is 26% or 26 cents of the $100 of assessed valuation. That's a reduction from the current tax rate of 53 cents. This is then based on a 98.7 collection rate. This would generate approximately $10,599,220 in property tax revenue. Each penny is in the tax rate yields approximately $407,662 in that scenario because the values are higher, the penny garners additional value. For scenario two, this is we move forward with 2025 values. So what you see on your assessed value prior to getting a notice in the mail from the county tax assessor, that's what this rate would be based on. That's at the 48.5 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, which is a reduction of about 4.5 cents from the current rate. Once again, based on the 98.7% collection rate, because again, we don't ever really achieve 100% in tax collections. That generates about $10,401,000 in property tax revenue. In that scenario, 1 cent change in the tax rate yields approximately $214,000. So you have that difference of $407,000 per penny to $214,000. So that's why you see the difference in the actual property tax rate, because the penny is not generating as much revenue. So I just wanted to put that out there. Since the initial budget message was presented, we have been watching very closely as to what's going on with the external influences. Based on the latest information from the General Assembly that I can gather is that Senate Bill 889, this is the Senate bill that was filed to pause all property revals for the current year. That affects 9 counties across the state. It is not just for Pender County. It is not just for Onslow County. Nine counties across the entire state. From what I'm seeing is that may move through the House. It's already made its way through the Senate. So it's obtained 3 separate votes on the Senate floor. So it's making its way through the House, delaying property revaluations for another year, which would mean that scenario 2 becomes the most likely scenario. Again, this can change. I don't guarantee any of it, but this is based on the latest insight that we can gather. And this insight was gathered this morning in regards to what is moving in in both chambers of the General Assembly. The House has some other parallel bills. You may have seen things for the voter referendum to put limits on property tax for local governments. My guess is that if that goes to a vote, I'm pretty sure I know where that's going to go. And where people are going to put their vote in that. But again, we don't really know a ton of detail on that. And again, that would be being proposed for the November ballot as a statewide election sort of deal. So again, I'm going to kind of move into some of the funds to hit some of these things. And again, trying to answer the questions that we had received in generality. So the first thing I wanted to address, contracted services. So the town utilizes contracted services in numerous ways, several operational areas where specialized expertise, licensing, equipment, or temporary or project-based staffing is required, or services. These services are commonly used for things like engineering and technical services, specialized maintenance or repairs, coastal engineering and environmental services, information technology support, temporary or seasonal operational needs, legal, auditing, regulatory compliance services, and potential capital project implementation. If we have to bring in bond counsel for some reason, that can sometimes come under a contracted service. So it's not essentially just spending money to help me do my job because I don't feel like doing my job. It's because there is a specialized need that is being requested. And again, that's an operational line item that is scrutinized on every department and what those specific requests are. In many cases, I think we can probably say that contracted services is more cost-effective than hiring a full-time staff because it avoids long-term salary, benefits, training, retirement, and equipment obligations for services that are periodic or highly specialized. Where ongoing operational demands justify permanent staffing, the town evaluates whether employee positions would provide improved service delivery or long-term cost savings. So an example of this will be in a future effort. We currently contract out long care services for our community center and this facility here. We will be analyzing that next year to determine, is there a cost benefit to bringing this in-house? How is staff structured to be able to accomplish these services? Or are we better off with a contracted service? That's something that we will do. That is something that as the manager, we're constantly evaluating the services being delivered. And this is just one little example. I just wanted to provide that context. Dues and subscriptions and training and travel was brought up. Professional memberships are funded when they provide a direct operational, regulatory, training, or strategic benefit to the town rather than serving solely as a personal benefit to the employee. Many memberships provide access to industry standards, technical resources, legislative services, certifications, training opportunities, grant information, and professional collaboration that support more effective municipal operations and decision-making. In many cases, memberships are associated with the position or function being performed rather than intended solely for personal advancement. These memberships can improve operational efficiency, reduce risk, enhance staff expertise, and help the town remain current with changing regulations and industry standards. The town also recognizes the concern regarding employee turnover and portability of professional credentials. However, the operational value gained during the employee's tenure, including improved service delivery, regulatory compliance, and institutional knowledge, is viewed as a benefit to the organization while the employee remains with the town. Staff reviews memberships annually to determine whether they continue to provide sufficient organizational value and whether the expenditure is appropriate and justified within the overall budget. There's certain things that have to be done as far as training. License holders have to have certain training, certifications that are held by multiple municipal staff across the board. That's where these things are being budgeted for and expended. If somebody goes and gets a water distribution license, that benefits the town because they are then another resource that can operate a system. If we don't have those licenses in place, we're out of compliance with our permit from the state level, and you all don't want that. If that employee decides to get that certification and move on to the next jurisdiction, that's what we do pay studies for. That is what we periodically look at, the compensation that's being provided to an employee to determine, are we competitive within the market? If we're not competitive in the market, going and getting a certification is going to benefit that employee. We need to keep the employees here in Surf City that do a good job and that are committed to serving our residents, and we strive to do that. Moving on to uniforms. Has been brought up, and I get it. I just want to say that providing standardized uniforms supports the town's operational safety and professional standards by ensuring several things. Employees are readily identifiable to residents and visitors. Appropriate protective work attire is consistently provided. Contaminated clothing is properly managed and laundered. I'm going to just give an example here because I think it's important. We have water and wastewater staff that are out here that are monitoring collection systems. They have pump stations. There's dangers in these things, and for me to rely on an employee to present their own uniforms in that sort of situation is probably unrealistic. Health and safety risks are minimized with this. Employees are not personally burdened with excessive uniform replacement and cleaning costs, and the town maintains a professional and consistent appearance across departments. There's many events that administrative staff might go to. Do I have Town of Surf City logoed polo shirts? Yes, I do. Do I wear those? Yes, I do. My budget has been $100 a year. To get a decent shirt, I venture to say I might get 2 out of that $100, and I do wear those. Other staff has been minimized. Council has reduced their expenditure from $1,800 to $600. And again, that's not putting them on the spot, but that's a decision for them to make if they want to pay for uniforms out of their pocket or put that in the budget. But overall, things like uniform programs being important for departments, like I mentioned, such as water, sewer, stormwater, solid waste operations, where visibility, sanitation, and employee safety are critical in field environments. Likewise, recreation, tourism, and community event staff benefit from branded apparel that helps residents and visitors identify authorized personnel. Facilities, grounds, IT, and public works employees frequently perform physical or outdoor work where durable, standardized attire is necessary. I don't know how many times I've seen our IT director in the attic of this building. Our IT director is in the crawl space of buildings. They are running wires. They're not just sitting behind a computer and a polo shirt that they're wearing to perform those duties. They're going to be dirty. They're going to get messed up. So again, I get I truly get the concern, and where we can minimize, we will. But there are certain uniform needs that are going to be prevalent across the organization. So just wanted to address that. Yes, ma'am.
On the uniform for the town council, you said it was how much?
$600 total, so $100 each unless y'all are bartering or bargaining, you know,
I
that
just
kind
wanted
of
to clarify, because when you put it out there the first time, it sounded like individual.
No, it's not
Like,
individual.
yeah, we're not getting that.
$100 each. Choose wisely what you want to purchase. So that's covering uniforms, solid waste. So the town contracts with GFL to provide sanitation services, including trash collection. Residents are billed for these services, and the fees collected help cover the cost of the contract. In the current budget, the GFL contract costs the town about $1.4 million, while approximately $1.7 million is collected from users. The additional revenue is used to help cover related services such as the vegetative debris pickup program, bulk item collection, and the rollback program. And I'm going to get into the rollback here in a second. If any costs are not fully recovered by user fees, the difference is paid for the town from the town's general fund. The desire to have solid waste pay for itself is there, and we are certainly dedicated to working to get there. And I venture to guess next year we will be there. Can it be operated like an enterprise fund? Absolutely. Getting into the rollback service, rollback program, let me just kind of back up a little bit. This isn't in my notes, but I do want to address it. The rollback program was something that was requested that staff look into. This was based on two things. The first thing is that people were not doing what they were supposed to be doing and bringing their trash cans back in. What that resulted in is a town that has trash cans that are lining the streets on Saturdays, on Mondays, on Tuesdays. It is not a good look for the town. It creates hazards for driving, for pedestrians, etc. Council at the time, once again, asked staff, what would it take to bring this in-house? At the time, we had guidance from our legal counsel, not our current legal counsel, that force positioning people into the rollback program may not be in the town's best interest from a legal standpoint. So we stopped that. If you got multiple citations, you were automatically enrolled in that, whether you wanted it or not. And that billing immediately started. Once again, legal counsel provided guidance that may not be the best approach. So we looked at is bringing the rollback in-house for those reasons. It wasn't to provide a benefit to property owners who are renting their homes. It was for the two purposes stated. Those costs are borne and absorbed throughout the entire solid waste department, but seemingly benefit only a certain geographical area of the town. So those are the realities and facts. I cannot charge somebody, if they're a residential property, different rates on the island and the mainland. It's just state law. I can't do it. So this was about the only approach that we could come up with where we could have a consistent service that's being delivered to mitigate the problems. In addition to this, when carts are being rolled out, code enforcement, because there's still citizen demand that the carts aren't left out on the street, that is very reasonable and understood. Code enforcement is spending a lot of time going and issuing citations for the carts being rolled out. Citation has to be issued with probable cause. A picture is taken. We have to document that, build the case, and then issue a citation. That's a lot of administrative effort that goes into one single citation for a trash cart. The end result of this certainly could be that rollback program goes away, but the enforcement desire is still going to be there. So what we would be taking away from rollback inherently would most likely be put back into some enforcement program to make sure that this town is being kept in a manner that is still visibly attractive, but also mitigating the safety concerns with carts just hanging out there all the time. So that's sort of the rundown with it. The rollback program currently accounts for between 11 and 15% of the proposed solid waste expenditures. If the board, once again, chose to shift responsibility back to property owners or rental companies, those resources could be redirected to ordinance compliance and other operational priorities. It is also important to note that these staff now support several additional community service functions that were previously handled by facilities and ground staff, including servicing the 39 beach accesses, which requires rolling carts down to the street for access for our solid waste provider, refilling dog waste stations, and then monitoring beach access flags. So they're the first line of defense for that. The town understands that some residents view the rollback service as a convenience rather than a core service, and it's reasonable to expect continued discussion about the program, I would say, in the coming year. I think that is absolutely reasonable to expect that this board is going to take this item up. What changes would be presented? I have not formulated recommendations, but it is something that I think that this board can certainly tackle. Any potential change would need to balance resident expectations, operational efficiency, compliance challenges, and overall service levels. So those are the core metrics in which we would want to evaluate those decisions. Again, the decision would have to be made based on relevant facts and data that would be presented back to the board. Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. Just wanted to talk about this a little bit. The town's Parks and Recreation Department evaluates programs, activities, and related funding on an annual basis to ensure services remain financially responsible and aligned with community needs. Parks and Recreation programming is structured through, recently we adopted a cost recovery policy within the town, and the town continuously evaluates participation fees. This concept is born through strategic thought process, and when I brought in a new Parks and Recreation director, that was one of the things that we discussed as a goal for him to evaluate the cost recovery program. And essentially what that does, it looks at programs being delivered, what the participation levels have to be in order to generate the revenue. If the participation or revenue is not there, the program doesn't happen. It also allows for certain programs to generate additional revenue for the town that can be then translated into other community service type events, gatherings, whatever it might be that a Parks and Recreation Department would typically do. So you might have I'm just throwing something out there, please don't take this and run with it, but a community fun night where, we might bring in something, a bounce house for the youth, maybe a face painting or something of that nature. We're not charging the parents or children to jump in that bounce house, but we know that the expenditure for that has been covered by a revenue generated by something like youth soccer. That's one thing that, and many youth programming and adult programming for athletics generates revenue for the town. There is just expenditures that sometimes can offset that. Our Parks and Recreation Director made a presentation recently that really highlighted the town of Surf City's position within our region at generating about 50% of revenue, which is a pretty high revenue number in comparison to other communities within our region. Also, what was implemented this year was a 50% increase on non-resident user fees. So if you're a non-resident and you want to participate in our youth soccer program, you're paying more than what a resident rate is. We also open up registration before non-residents are able to register for those programs. We did and I'm probably just rambling, Madam Mayor, so I apologize, but we did do a study a couple years ago, and I wanted to know where our participation was coming from in youth soccer. We just plucked that out. 80% were non-resident users of that program. So once again, translating into the non-resident fee that was implemented, that is opportunity for revenue to be generated from the town. Personnel, 7 new positions, 3 battalion chiefs, 3 firefighters, and 1 communications coordinator. Talking about fire personnel. Currently, the structure is we have a volunteer base that utilizes the ladder truck for response. When a call is made, our staffing allows us to operate the engine. So there's a national standard that has to be adhered to of how many firefighter personnel have to be within that engine. So therefore, the engine is the first line of response, and then a ladder truck comes after that. In order to be efficient, consistent with NFPA standards, and maintain ISO ratings, professional staff for a ladder truck is what the town has been pursuing. Once again, we've always operated a ladder truck. That's not the question. It's how that is staffed and how that is being deployed. So this is the final year of our staffing plan to make sure that we have enough staff per shift, because again, there's 3 shifts that are being operated and 2 fire departments, that we have enough staff to operate that fire truck. So that is the sole reasoning for those personnel requests, and the battalion chiefs and firefighters help make up the rank and file structure of that program as recommended by the the fire chief. The communications coordinator, this was a discussion once again, as we continuously have about how the town communicates to the public, and the continuous request for additional communication back to the residents, and that's where this position is being held. Our current communications staff member also serves as our public information officer, and also works alongside of our emergency management staff and doing some other emergency management tasks, more pre-planning type tasks, not necessarily operations, but the staff member that we do has that background knowledge, and she is extremely valued within the organization. Getting into overtime, we had a lot of questions about overtime budgets, line items within the budget. The Fair Labor Standards Act requires overtime for employees. That's if they're non-exempt, according to those standards, they're eligible for the overtime pay. A choice can be made to earn compensatory time or comp time, but that is the employee choice, not prescribed by the employer. In addition, when comp time is accrued and separation occurs, the comp time must be paid out at the rate in which that employee is currently earning. So therefore, if an employee earns at $20 an hour and they're now making $35 an hour, that comp time earned at $20 has to be paid out at $35. Again, it's a risk that the town has, but once again, comp time is always preferred over paying out overtime. And most of the time, employees would prefer the extra time off. Let's see, with that, department managers closely monitor these expenditures and offer flex time to minimize the impact of overtime and comp time accrued. I request reports from HR. I don't want to see comp time exceeding 40 hours. I feel like that presents risks to our finances, because if this is unchecked, comp time can continue to accrue. They get that certification, they move on to the next organization. By law, I have to pay them out their comp time. It is wages earned, so therefore it's a liability back to the town on that. Accommodations tax. So again, the accommodations tax is a revenue generated from short-term rentals, not property tax. Accommodations tax funds, things like beach nourishment, special events, ocean rescue, beach patrol, which is operated under our police department, activities of the Beautification Enhancement Committee, Christmas decorations or holiday decorations, among other items. These funds are meant to support the visitors who generate them and to maintain or improve the infrastructure that makes tourism possible. Statutory guidelines on accommodations tax can vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. That authority typically is based on each jurisdiction. Our authority may be different than the authority of Wrightsville Beach, or our authority may be different than Caswell Beach, or the city of Raleigh, or the city of Charlotte, et cetera. So that's always going to be determined by statutory authority and what we have authority to spend that money on. Once again, another goal upcoming is to define what those expenditures can be used for, and then have that reviewed by legal counsel. I think that's going to help us tremendously determine what accommodations tax can be used for and what it can't be used for. A general rule is that if it's a service that's provided to every resident within town, that's not something that I can use accommodations tax for. Let's see. While I'm on this, I'm going to just kind of address the accommodations tax reserve. I think that was highlighted by a prior question. That reserve has been used to fund capital expenditures in the past. We've built an entire phase of a park with our reserve, and we basically said that, okay, well, building this is going to generate additional accommodations, additional tourism to the town, so we're gonna check that box and move forward. We will continue to do this. But accommodations tax, one guarantee that we can always use this on is for beach nourishment. And once again, I'll get into beach nourishment in a little bit, but with the federal project staring down the initial capital expenditure for that, for the initial construction, I'm here to tell you that we have to keep an eye on our accommodations tax reserve in order to make sure that we have a little buffer there in case costs exceed what the engineer cost estimate are, because that's money that I can directly, well, I can't do anything, that the board can transfer over into beach nourishment to cover any sort of deficiencies in that fund. Right now, we're not projecting towards that, but I can't predict the future. Beach amenities, once again, there's a question about, us spending money on beach amenities. That is funded through accommodations tax. So the town does make investments for things like showers, trash cans, porta-johns, foot wash stations, pet waste bags, et cetera. Those things are funded through accommodations tax, not your property tax. Tourism advertising. The town understands that some residents believe tourism activities and advertising should mainly be paid for private businesses instead of public funds. At the same time, tourism is an important part of the local economy and helps support town services, infrastructure, jobs, and local businesses. Tourism-related revenues, including accommodations tax funds, help pay for tourism promotion, visitor services, and community amenities that benefit both visitors and residents. Tourism also brings in sales tax revenue. Once again, that sales tax is one of the primary funding mechanisms to determine what the ad valorem tax is for our property owners, and helps reduce the tax burden on year-round residents by adding to the town's overall revenue base. Investments in tourism and visitor-related improvements can also enhance public spaces, economic growth, and quality of life for the entire community. Majority of out-of-state advertising or advertising that is being done is focused around the shoulder season or off-season to help businesses through that slower time of year. We are not putting out advertisement to Ohio for people to come to the beach on the 3rd of July. It's just not something that we are spending money on. It is trying to highlight the tremendous opportunity to generate additional revenue within this town during months in which we do not see the influx of tourism. Tourism brings challenges to the town, traffic being one of them. I'm not going to get into that tonight, even though I am passionate about it. But our focus has always been on shoulder season tourism to help highlight Surf City and help our local businesses generate that revenue. And that has flattened out a little bit since COVID. I think we see year-round spending within the community, which is a good thing for our businesses. Water, sewer, and stormwater. Water and sewer services are funded entirely through customer water and sewer bills, along with occasional grants when they become available. These services are operated as enterprise funds, which means they function like a self-supporting utility, similar to a business. We have rate models that factor into what our operational costs are, what our future capital investments are necessary to maintain or expand those services, and that's what generates what the rate should be. I think we were able to highlight this through prior council actions on projects that have come up. In order to do a wastewater project, we factored in that capital project years in advance and adjusted the rates in order to be prepared for that. There will be a time where there's some investment that has to be done, and we have to borrow that money. We might not have it in reserve within our enterprise fund, and we have to go to the local government commission and demonstrate that we have the ability to pay back a loan. And the first thing they're going to say is, if you don't have your rates set to cover this expenditure, you have to raise your rates, and you have to commit to raising your rates, or we're not going to give you this money. So that's just kind of how sort of the collateral becomes the rate, based on the rate payer. So water, just wanted to highlight, the town is actively pursuing hydraulic modeling for water production to determine the best course of production and delivery in the future. In addition, within this study, it's going to document efforts to increase quality of water being distributed to our customers. I'll say that there's emerging contaminants within water sources. Thankfully, Surf City is not dealing with this because we don't draw our water from surface waters like other communities. It comes from a well. But the way that the standards and regulations are going is that things are going to come up in the future, and we're going to have to be prepared to address those. So those are going to be some of the focused capital investments on the water side is quality, and then how we're generating water and where that hydraulic need is coming from. Do we need a water tank somewhere else to meet pressure demands for the future? Wastewater. So the town recently awarded a contract to ELJ to construct phase 2 of our wastewater effluent project along J.H. Batts Road, increasing the town's wastewater disposal capacity by 400,000 gallons per day. This project, once again, is going to be at our park expansion project. And what we did was we looked at the need for this project. We looked at the need for the multi-purpose fields, and a good majority of earthworks, civil works part of this project is going to be funded under this utility project and not the general fund. I think that's a win-win for the community that we're able to couple these projects, and that's been demonstrated with another project that just got started to reduce our costs for the Parks and Recreation project. So close coordination occurs between utilities, Parks and Rec, consultants from Parks and Rec, consultants from utilities, to make sure that we're merging these two things together and trying to be as efficient as possible with it. Why do we need a stormwater department? We get this question a lot, and stormwater is new for the town of Surf City. I'll say that in years past, stormwater improvements competed against general fund expenditures. So a decision had to be made: are we going to fund a police car, or are we going to take care of this stormwater issue? Well, that's a difficult decision to have to make, but in certain senses, they can be equally as important. Just depends on the scenario, I'm not going to say that one is more important, but that balance of trying to make those decisions on what gets funded through general fund tax was one that prior boards had to tackle. And traditionally, we were setting aside $100,000 of general fund money to go towards stormwater projects, which does not accomplish very much. I mean, that was basically one minor project a year, and that's maybe reestablishing some ditching, replacing a pipe somewhere. That's basically what that was funding. So the monthly stormwater fees support the routine inspection, maintenance, and repair of storm drains and roadside ditches that manage rainwater through the town. These systems are designed to collect and safely convey stormwater away from streets and private property, reducing localized flooding and protecting homes, roads, and infrastructure. Without this ongoing maintenance, things get clogged up, and that's a challenge for us. That backs up water on the roadways, reducing the lifespan of asphalt, which then requires us to come back in and make investments in roads quicker than what may have been necessary. But that's just one example. A lot of the capital projects that we have been able to accomplish in the last 2 years have been primarily grant funded, and that is born through advanced planning, coordination with the state through programs that they had, developing plans for the town so that we had shovel-ready projects that we could execute. And we'll continue to strive for major capital projects to be completed through that grant award process. But the stormwater fee right now is really covering your ongoing maintenance, inspections, cleaning out catch inlets that may not have been cleaned out, or we had to rely on DOT and again, I'm not putting them down. They have a lot of work to do. That may not show up for months, and that's not acceptable to the service demands and levels of expectation that we have for our town. Beach nourishment. So the Coastal Storm Risk Management Project, again, intimately familiar with this one because I've been working on it for 6 years. The town has been working on this for, I'd venture to say 30 years, just for generality. This is a long-term 50-year commitment designed to protect and maintain Surf City's shoreline. The majority of the upfront construction cost is covered by the federal government and state, while the town is responsible for approximately 17.5% of the initial cost, estimated at about $34 million. So that's just the town of Surf City's obligation to that federal project. That's only initial construction. Recurring funding of the Beach Nourishment Fund will still have to happen so that we can be prepared for a 6-year re-nourishment cycle. That is written into that 50-year contract, but future authorizations through Congress will have to occur for re-nourishment, and that goes through the Water Resources Development Act on the federal level. That's why we have to constantly keep in contact with our congressional delegation. Once we get into the re-nourishment cycle, the town share goes up to 25%. And those cycles will be factored out based on inflation. And really, we won't know what the cost is going to be until we get to that re-nourishment cycle. And that is solely based on what happens between initial construction and first round of nourishment. Storms can happen, erosion happens. We may have a named storm, and the Army Corps may come in and replenish the beach the year prior to our scheduled re-nourishment. Never do I wish for a named storm, but that puts us in a position for less material necessary for that re-nourishment cycle. Less material equals less cost. So again, that's an unknown at this point, but that just kind of goes over that re-nourishment process for beach nourishment. Paid parking. So pivot parking contract is valid until February of 2027. So it is not a forever contract, and we're more than happy to look at that contract. The compensation for pivot parking is generally budgeted about $600,000 in expenditure. This covers all operational costs for Pivot. That's personnel cost, that's maintenance of, I shouldn't say signage or parking lots, that comes out of something else, but that's going to basically them running the show and covering the costs for all of their operations. That fee is generated and it's based on 4.75 of all gross revenue collected up to $1 million per year. And then if we collect more than $1 million, that percentage goes down to 2.85. So there is some incentive based on that. Once again, is there a better rate or a better option out there? We have the opportunity to check on that and see where that goes. Let's see. Capital projects. So I'm gonna get into the ladder truck first. So I asked Chief to provide some information just on the process, because again, developing specifications for a ladder truck is not something that you go to the manufacturer or the dealership and say, yeah, this one looks good. We have the money, we're gonna buy this one. That's not generally how it works. Each department has different needs that have to be met based on the jurisdiction. So bear with me with this one, but over recent months, the fire department has been working on the initial specifications and procurement for the new ladder truck. We established a committee with representatives from every rank, which has been actively pushing the project forward. The team has held multiple meetings with vendors, visited vendor exhibitions, and inspected both new and equipped trucks at fire departments. This approach helps us assess the latest trends and technologies to make sure they align with our standards for value, reliability, and functionality. To ensure a competitive and responsible process, the department has contacted 3 qualified fire apparatus manufacturers or vendors for initial proposals. That's First Choice Fire Apparatus or Sutphen Fire Connections or E1, and Atlantic Coast Fire Trucks or Spartan Smeal. To date, 1 proposal has been received and we are waiting responses from the other remaining vendors. Once all proposals are in, the department will then conduct a detailed comparison of pricing, specifications, equipment, delivery timelines, service support, and operational capabilities. This is a highly specialized assessment that demands careful evaluation of operational needs, apparatus specifications, safety standards, long-term maintenance, and overall life cycle value to the community. Unlike standard vehicles, fire apparatus are custom designed emergency response units that typically remain in service for 20 or more years. Following that review, the proposals will be returned to each vendor for revisions and clarification as needed to ensure that all manufacturers quote comparable specifications. This step is critical to make an informed and fair evaluation. Our expectation is that after the initial revision process, we'll be able to identify the vendor that provides the best overall value based on both price and product specifications. We expect this to happen later this summer with a potential contract signing in late summer, early fall. The department's goal is to complete this process thoroughly and correctly rather than rushing a decision on a major capital investment. A properly specified ladder truck is essential to firefighter safety, operational effectiveness, and long-term reliability for the town and community we serve. So on financing a fire truck, the idea was said, hey, can we push the expenditures out over a certain term? Like, let's look at that. We got to make good decisions. So the town sought an amortization schedule from a local government lender to develop an estimated annual payment for the acquisition of the ladder truck. This was done to evaluate current interest rates within the market. On a 10 and 15-year schedule, rates were presented at 5.5% and 6% respectively. In a basic interest earned on keeping money in the bank versus interest paid for financing, a decision will need to be made. Do we pay for this ladder truck up front, avoid that interest, and save the town money? What that does is it takes away from interest being earned on the investment with the money sitting there. The way it's looking is that we can save the town money if this board makes the decision that they want to pay for a ladder truck up front with cash. I mean, that's a decision that can be made. Based on that schedule, you've got, on a 10-year loan, interest made over that period would be about $537,000 on 2.75 million. Interest paid over that 10-year period would be about $882,000. So once again, that's a difference of about $345,000. So there's real numbers to be able to make those decisions once we actually have solidified numbers from the vendor based on the specifications and getting a consistent pricing back to the town for this acquisition. So those will be made. We talk about the multi-use path funding, setting aside $500,000 for that. The multi-use path is an ongoing initiative which began years ago as part of the East Coast Greenway project and Mountains to Sea Trail project. It extends well beyond the town limits. Funding comes from grants, potential funding from NCDOT, developers, and Town of Surf City investment. Information regarding the multi-use path is available on the website, but we do work very hard to try to fund this project with grant money. There has been a continuous expression of desire for a multi-use path within the town since I've been here. I know even before that, the town was heavily involved in the Mountains to Sea Trail and connecting these larger areas. And again, I say this all the time, multi-use path connecting the island and mainland is not necessarily a recreational amenity. People will use it for that. For some, it's going to be a transportation necessity. Being able to get back and forth through alternative modes of transportation between the mainland and the island or vice versa, that's going to be another resource that we have, potentially reducing vehicles off the roadway. Am I going to say this solves traffic issues? Absolutely not. You know, the studies that I have seen is it has the potential to divert up to about 8% of trips generated. Once again, that's dependent on a lot of factors, where people are going from their origin to destination, et cetera. But a multi-use path has been demonstrated to show that it increases property values, increases opportunities for people to spend money at our local businesses where somebody might not have made that decision to go and frequent the restaurant or go and get ice cream just because they don't have a convenient way to do that. They don't want to get in the car and go park and do that, et cetera. Maybe another opportunity to generate additional revenue. The town submitted for a $3.7 million US DOT build grant this year. I should know hopefully in the next 2 months whether or not the town has been successful in that grant application. That is a competitive grant process. Once again, we are competing for those federal dollars on a national level for a multimodal project. Will we get it? I don't know. What our chances are, I have no clue. But the town is making efforts to try and fund this multi-use path with grant money, with alternative sources of revenue as much as we possibly can. If there's not Surf City investment, it delays the project. That's plain and simple. So the decision is, do you want to risk delaying the multi-use path or not? Again, my recommendation is that there's funding available so we can continue to advance segments of this multi-use path to put it in a position that it qualifies for grant funding better. There's one thing that I've learned over my career is that if you are not prepared to apply for a grant, you're probably not going to get the grant. There has to be some upfront expenditures that go into that in order for us to be prepared. There might be a segment that we need to make that is a short length, that we need to get done because it's critical. This will help fund that. The multi-use path project is a multi-year project, so it's not something that If it doesn't get spent, it goes away. It stays within that fund. Those are until we need to use those. However, we have plans to advance segments that we need funding for, particularly to get from Community Center Drive to the new park. That's a critical subsection of segment 5 along J.H. Batts Road. We did add that into our design and engineering scope. Our engineer has to modify stormwater permits that are existing on the ball field project, on the Earl G. and Inez Batts project. We're working through the permitting process, talking to property owners about easement acquisition. I can't let a contract for that project until I have all those things in place. Those things do take time, but they are being worked on diligently, and we expect to move forward with this project hopefully in the fall. Once that project gets awarded, construction of it will be pretty quick. So we are really excited about that. Fire Department Battalion Chief Vehicle, $75,000. That's for, it becomes a response vehicle. It's not just a take-home car for a battalion chief. That's what will hold equipment, turnout gear, additional air pack readiness for when they arrive on scene to command and oversee whatever the incident that is presented to them. Police Department fleet replacement vehicles, $180,000. This one is pretty mundane. The town does have a fleet management policy within our police department where we know certain vehicles are going to be replaced on a cyclical process. This maintains readiness for our officers. This is a mobile office for them. If you need them to respond, you want a reliable horse, I can guarantee that. So that's where the $180,000 goes. Next year in the schedule, I think we have 4 vehicles as part of that process, and those will be budgeted accordingly and funded in next year's budget. This is going to be basically capital expenditure, but the need for police vehicles is always going to be there. Emergency management, $80,000 for the Disaster Strategic Technology Reserve Trailer. This is a mobile communications asset for emergency management to deploy in times of need. So this is an asset that will be available to the town for a multi-year lifespan, and it bolsters the town's communications and radios system. We've talked about this before. We had zero communication in Florence. We don't want to be in that situation. We have to be able to communicate, and our emergency management department has done a fantastic job making sure that we have built out the infrastructure for communications within the town. We don't want to be in that situation. So, with that being said, I just wanted to kind of make sure I'm addressing even some of the things that were brought up this evening, things that are critical and essential. Again, combing through the budget for expenditures, particularly in the general fund, getting things down to where we feel the service can still be delivered, but we may not be making enhancements on that service. That has been completed. The multi-use path, I just went over that. Memberships, once again, we're not funding memberships just for personal gain. It has to be directly tied to the field in which that employee is working under. Employee appreciation expenditures at $10,000. So we just had a spring event at the community center. The town paid for hamburgers and hot dogs, buns, and maybe some chips, I think, but potluck is being used. My personal opinion, I like that. I like to get a little bit of flair in that process. Do we provide certain recognition for employees that have been here 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years? Yes, we do. Are those rewards beyond a cutting board or a tote bag? No, they're not. I think we gave out some grilling tools one year for a 20 and 25-year employee. Those are things that go into our retention program. We do recruitment and retention. We have a committee of staff that looks at these things, and we want to be able to provide our employees a minor benefit to them throughout the year, for their hard work and dedication. We have budgeted for ice cream at the end of the year, and I think in September or October, when people have been busting their hump throughout the season. And the last 2 years, we've set this up with local businesses, and they're supposed to take what the employee orders. There's a limit on what they can get. The last 2 years, these businesses have donated this back to the town. But that's not something that we're going to know. They're doing this out of their heart. It's not predetermined. I'd hate to go and ask for a business to do this for the town. But anyway, just wanted to share that with you all. Bank fees. We had a wonderful opportunity 2 weeks ago. We met with our First Citizens, where our investment portfolio, they come down and they give us an overview of how our investments are doing. And he asked the question, hey, how are our services beyond investment services doing? I said, well, you're here, I'm going to bring it up. We want lower bank fees. Well, a week later, we get a call from our local branch, and they want to come and meet with us. So it is something that we do look at and want to look at. And quite frankly, we don't have a local bank here. We do in Hawley Ridge, and we do in Sneads Ferry, and we take deposits every single day to that bank. So there are transactions that the town is making, and a lot of transactions that warrant bank fees. They're just not going to do that for free, even though we will continue to ask. We do understand that there may be a Chase Bank being built in town. When they establish themselves in town, I think there'd be a great opportunity for them to evaluate, hey, this might be a service that we want to provide back to the town at a reduced rate. We can shop those, and we will. And we'll continue to try to drive that down. Tourism advertisement, I addressed that. A firing range at $30,000 that had already been cut from the budget. It's not part of the manager's recommended budget. Let's see. Accommodations tax fund, tried to cover that. Beach nourishment, tried to cover that. I can't read my writing on here. I was trying to diligently get it here, but anywho, enterprise fund, tried to address that and how that's generated through services being provided, and then deferring cost. What can we defer? What do we need to purchase today? Those things are being looked at and have been looked at for the budget. So, again, I hate to belabor this or sound like I'm preaching to anybody. That is not the way that I want to come off in providing explanation. This is just a ton of information, and you all deserve that information to be presented back to you in the best way possible, because there is a interest in knowing the information. I think we're all thrilled about that. I don't speak for council, but I'm pretty sure they're thrilled about the engagement and being able to explain this, because quite frankly, a lot of questions in years past weren't being asked, but I still assure you decisions were still being made to try and make sure that this organization remains efficient, that we are being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar and not squandering money and making expenditures, because you all would see that. You would see a department head coming up here and asking for any expenditure over $90,000, and you would know exactly what they're spending that money on, and that is not happening. And I attribute the concern about underspending a projected expenditure, I'll take the blame for it. I'm a frugal person, and I look at those things. And can we do a better at trend analysis? Absolutely. And I think that we have done that. We have cut our expenditures to where I, as the manager, feel comfortable with it. We've made some adjustments that are new to this year, and one of those is reducing the expenditure line item in our police and fire departments within our overtime budget. I'll tell you right now, our overtime expenditure exceeds what our next year overtime expenditure budget is set at. But we did this because we know that we most likely will not be 100% staffed all year long, and a budget transfer will have to be made mid-fiscal year. Is that something that I think is a sustainable approach? No. Are we looking for ways to try and reduce the expenditures that make sense? Absolutely. So just want to kind of give a couple of those examples so that you all know, and the public that are watching and engaging in other forums can help understand the budget. I'll reserve the discussion about the fund balance transfers into capital improvement, the CIP, for when those items come up. I think that's a much more appropriate way. But I will say that using general fund balance to fund operational expenditures that are recurring expenditures year over year, that's not a sustainable approach. We cannot do that because that money will run out at some point, and that expenditure still is maintained. So just try to think about it that way. I don't try to simplify that process, but I can't go and buy a car for $40,000 and pay for it out of my savings account that I have $20,000 in because that next payment after $20,000 is going to come due, and I can't put myself in that position, nor do we ever want to put the town in that position. Fund balance for coastal communities, when we set our policy, we evaluated 30 plus municipalities, coastal jurisdictions, and whether or not they have a policy on fund balance, that became irrelevant. What their fund balance is in comparison to their expenditure, you've got some ranges that go from 500% down to a very minimal percentage. Of our coastal communities, 85 is right in line with that. And again, we have the information. I'm not trying to dispel anything, and I don't say that out of disrespect by any means, but when we developed the fund balance policy a few months ago, that information was presented so that the town could hone in on what that fund balance needed to be set at, and 85% was that target. So just want to give, again, additional background. Again, I hate that I am sitting up here directly communicating. I do this out of general ability to just try to give information, and again, I always welcome conversation and dialogue. I'm always, well, can't say I'm always available, but I'm available to come and talk, and tend to think I'm fairly approachable, and I'm happy to come and meet you wherever you may need to be, and we might disagree about things, but 'tis is life. So that's what I have, Madam Mayor.
That was, I don't know, an hour and 45 minutes maybe?
Well, I didn't even mean for it to be 45 minutes, but
This was in direct response to comments, surveys, everything.
yes, and there might have been a couple things that weren't addressed because some things came in as opinions as to what the town should or should not be doing. I'm not the policy maker. These fine folks are the policy makers, and I have sent them the survey responses, as they come in, not one by one, but I try to send the group of them to come in so they can see the comments as well. And again, trying to make those responses. If I have the email addresses, if I don't, I've gone to utility accounts to try to seek those out. But once again, if I don't have that resource, I can't respond to you directly. But please, if you have direct questions that aren't being answered, just let me know. And we're going to keep that survey up until June 2nd when we have the scheduled public hearing, which is the formality of the budget adoption process. So with that being said, with the budget message and delivery of the manager's recommended budget to council, I yield the floor, Madam Mayor, to you and the board for any additional discussion or conversation that you want to have.
Thank you, Kyle. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you to you and the finance director, Melissa Moore. You've done an outstanding job, so it does not go unnoticed. As mayor, as the council that sits up here, it is one of our greatest responsibilities to make sure that Surf City is not only strong today, but it's prepared for tomorrow. And I think that's what we have set out to do in our capital improvements. So capital improvements is all about there's planning and maintaining healthy reserves. I'm not going to take up a lot of time. I know we're everybody probably has a question or two.
I have a couple questions. I was quiet last time, so I'm going to talk a lot today. You talked about our emergency management trailer that Mr. Horn wants, and I know that that's something that a lot of us feel very strongly about. We have the disaster preparedness fund. Is that something that we can possibly fund out of that account?
Yes, yes, we can. That fund, we've tried to go back and research, because the question's been brought up. We tried to go back and do some research. It appears that the fund was generated or developed somewhere maybe 15 years ago. And it
came out post-Fran.
Yeah, and it has sat there. There's been no expenditures. It's earned interest, and it's grown a little bit. But yes, I do think that trailer that James needs could come out of that fund if that's what the board would like to do. I am comfortable reallocating that. And one thing I did fail to mention, and I wanted to bring it up now that we've sort of opened this up, is working with Frank on gym lights. So that was a $20,000 expenditure. Frank's a hardworking man, just like most employees within this town, men and women. He's been able to get quotes to fund this year. So that's a $20,000 expenditure that can be removed from Parks and Recreation, and these shiny LEDs can be installed this year for safety within our community center, within the gymnasium. So the gym lights is one thing I guess I gift to you, Madam Mayor and Council. Just working on with Frank, try to find some monies to do that.
So before we get off of the trailer, we also have the radio set up for that kind of goes hand in hand with that.
Oh, James, I might need you, buddy. Okay.
One more time, sorry.
You have the phase 3 of the two-way radio, and then the emergency management mobile radio units, and then you have the trailer, which is also communication. Bundling all those together using that money that's been sitting there forever. That was kind of the ask.
Gotcha. So they are two independent projects, but they work hand in hand. So the radio system side of it is the infrastructure for the system and the repeaters and such. The trailer is more of number one, it's a centralized housing for a mobile or deployable asset. It serves as a workspace for staff. It serves as a thing that we can take to, say, the community center, for example, and literally jack into their internet connection over there and provide for that building. So it's as much IT as it is EM, really.
Right, but it still falls under that emergency stuff.
I gotcha.
He's saying is the radio
Right.
portion or that project able to come out of that?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
no, I get the
Disaster
question.
preparedness fund too.
Are the accoutrements in which Councilman Pleil has brought up, are those emergency related?
Yes.
And if so, then yes,
Yes.
I think that would be completely
I
appropriate.
misunderstood. Yes, that is correct. It could be.
But I will say, as we all know, we want guidance on any funds, and I think it should be brought up that after this process, we should figure out what we're going to do with the residual funding in that. Is that something that we want to continue to fund, or is that something that we just roll back into general fund and James gets to compete with everybody else? You know, that's a decision we'll need to make at a later date. So just giving some advance notice to council.
So that puts it at 355,000 out of that 760,000. We'll
Yeah, I'm going to take your word. I don't have my number. I shuffle my book here. I'm still looking up my notes here, but yes.
James?
So we mentioned the fire truck, the ladder truck, as far as financing, or if we're going to pay for it out of pocket in the beginning. If we pay for it up front and we're able to utilize some cost savings, does that then come out of the capital improvement? Or does that going to come, like, which end does that come out of? Or is it going to come out of capital improvement? Either way, it just depends on if we're paying for part of it now or part of it later.
Yeah, so we pay out of capital improvement, not out of operating funds. The decision to pay upfront cash or finance will be a decision that has to be made. What I will say is that if you pay for a ladder truck in cash, in my professional opinion, and I'll always err on the side of being conservative when it comes to being responsible for the taxpayer dollar, I still feel like an expenditure needs to be made to recoup those costs for, again, future capital investments. Because if you make a 2.5 or 2.7 or whatever that cost is going to be out of capital reserve, you won't have capital reserve for additional capital projects. So there's going to still have to be identified revenue that goes back into the capital improvement fund, or we're seeking that money from somewhere else.
Currently, you do not have enough money in your capital improvement fund to pay for that fire truck. You have enough unassigned fund balance that we're transferring to the capital fund, but currently you do not have the money in there to pay for it.
Right, and I think there has been concern about the reserve fund balance being transferred and why are we doing that and what would be that being used for? And then I appreciate Kyle bringing up tonight that there was some discussion of financing part of it, and that could amount to as much as $800,000 in interest fees, and that's hard to swallow. Okay, thank you.
My last question on this part. I think rollback keeps coming up, and I know we've discussed the pros and cons in it as a general service to people, especially on those main roads on the island. If we were to take that service and only offer it during the peak months and go back to just doing it on the main roads like Topsail, South Shore, New River, would that then be something that we could potentially fund out of the accommodations tax fund?
That is,
Yeah.
that is a good question.
'Cause then we're not hitting those off-season
Yes.
months where it really is more of a function of tourism and the ability for people to get around and stuff like that. I just didn't, that's something that I would like to look into if that's
So
possible.
once again, Kyle, being always erring on the side of caution, I go back to my prior statement about our beach project and also identifying services or things that can be funded out of accommodations tax. My gut tells me yes, probably, but we'd have to have that legal litmus test performed, which we have a host of fine attorneys to be able to do that for us. But dedicating that recurring operational expense out of accommodations tax is not something I'd be comfortable recommending to this board until that project is completed. And also too, we have a situation with accommodations tax that, in our arrangement with Pender County that may not always be 100% stable. So I think the preference would still be at a solid waste. But again, staff is more than happy to bring scenarios back to this board to try and address things like equality, et cetera, for all of our solid waste rate payers within the town. So not to be long-winded with it, but I think that, once again, and that's why I put that in my presentation, is that my sense is that this board is going to want to take this up at some point in the very near future.
You got anything?
I just want to say, I think the board has done a good job collaborating and working, or staff working with the board. Let me turn that around. Coming up with this goal. One of my original things when we were staring at the tax increase last year was what we were going to do this year, because we knew the tax reevaluation was coming. And my goal all along was to be below revenue neutral, and staff is able to produce that, have been able to produce that presented budget. So I feel like that's a mission accomplished so far obviously we still have to vote, and we're working on tweaking on some little stuff here tonight. But I feel like we have met that goal, or at least we've met the goal I was seeking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions, John?
Just a comment. I think that Kyle and Melissa are doing a fantastic job. I think that and the input from our staff and how this is explained is very good. And I know people are going to have questions, and hopefully they'll get all their questions answered. But just know that they've delved into this 4,000 times to try to do whatever they could to balance it out and make it work. And I think we're on the right track.
So, Mr. Brewer, thank you. That was a very comprehensive overview, and I think you hit the highlights and you did an exceptional job. I think it made things a lot clearer for me. I hope it was helpful for you folks. Ms. Hawley, you took all my thunder, okay?
Sorry.
So I agree with Alicia that using this old reserve account to pay for what we need for public safety, hurricane preparedness is a great idea. I would, the whole concept of the rollback, I'd like to have you consider using the accommodations tax, and as Ms. Hawley presented, making the rollback in those areas at greatest risk for these issues, which tend to be our main roads. I'm sure some folks on the canals appreciate the rollback, and I know that in some neighborhoods it's almost inconsequential, and I think that might be something to look at. And I think Mr. Carter's here, and he can probably tell us more about where the problem is for rollback where are we having the biggest problems? I would imagine on.
What are you identifying as problems?
Well, okay,
what's a problem?
Maybe the historic problem.
What identify? So a problem is the trash carts being out in the road and they're in the way, or is a problem that a resident doesn't live here very full time and they want their carts rolled back? What do you mean? Like, what's a problem?
Okay, the problem the mayor pointed out was the safety risk and the appearance.
Well, out on my street, that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Yes, safety, risk, and appearance, correct. But that's not every street, so. I'm sorry.
No, and as
There's some people who do appreciate the services, and I'm hesitant to make a decision across the board when there's some neighborhoods that I don't understand because I don't live there, so.
Right, and using an opt-out procedure is a logistical nightmare.
Sure.
So that wouldn't work. You'd have to opt out an entire street. But that was good. The one thing I did.
I think we should definitely look into this, though. But for example, the accommodations tax, and we've already brought it up. When you pull that away, now you add the layer of enforcement. There's no way you're going to be able to pay for the enforcement side of it out of accommodations tax.
No,
and I'm not trying to shut it down. I'm just saying it's just more complicated. I know you and I talked about it last week. It's just more complicated than saying stop rolling them back.
what I'm looking for are alternative ways to maintain that, because the observation that it is a potential safety risk, and it does look uglier than all get out. I don't know if you drive down those roads. And I think we tried it with Scott Hitchings and code enforcement, and that had some varying results, and ultimately GFL decided not to play along anymore, so we adopted it as our own problem child, and we funded it. The funding is somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 is kind of with head count and roll. Seasonality of it, maybe that's an option. I don't know. I think we need to look at it, and I would prefer accommodations tax because it is, I think it fits the model, and you can tell me I'm wrong later.
I think Melissa Moore has told us probably I would say in the last maybe 10, 15 meetings that we sat in, Andy, that you're going to get your hand slapped possibly really hard by dipping into the accommodations tax to pay for the rollback. So it is definitely a discussion that we can dive into at another time, but.
Fine, it's an alternative.
Staff would just appreciate the opportunity to bring all alternatives to the table.
Which brings me to the fire truck. I'm glad to hear that it is moving forward. It was something that I wasn't aware of how far along we are. But one of the things I would ask that between now and June 5th, that perhaps we could get some options on how to pay for it. I think the observation, do we pay for it over time? Do we use one of the traditional municipal lease purchase option programs, which a lot of towns do? Right now we have the private bank loan versus the outright purchase. There are some things in the middle, and then look at the economics of doing it. And as Mr. Brewer pointed out, even if we pay for it up front, well, there's still going to be other things we need to do in the capital improvement plan. So if that wouldn't be too much, and because we're going to need to make a choice on the 5th of June how we're going to do this.
I don't think we got to decide if we're going to buy how we're going to buy the fire truck on the 5th of June.
That is something you stated in September.
I think
Yes,
that's
so-
the ongoing thing, but that's not a line in the sand.
In order to prepare ourselves, at minimum, that annual payment based on the schedule would need to be within there. I don't, again, I'm not being argumentative about this, but I don't know of a scenario in which we are not paying for a fire truck.
Well, and the question is, what is our cash flow requirement in 26-27 budget year? Right now, we have a placeholder of 378,000, or plus or minus, right?
Yeah.
So is that an appropriate placeholder, or is there some other placeholder? Do we need to put $1 million in there? Or do we put in the $40,000 in interest that we would have to pay since we're not getting the truck?
Well, we've talked about that, about accounting for it and the standards that we can't just only budget for the interest difference on it. I think that at the 378, that's what staff is going to recommend, that we continue to move forward with. And then this council is going to have to make that decision as to whether you're going to pay for it up front or finance it.
I've had discussions with Kyle about the fire truck, and I think that's reasonable. I think what he's proposed is very reasonable to move forward.
Agree. Any other questions?
I'm not even going to bring up the council bling. That's dead horse. All I know is that we do spend money on council, and council receives remuneration for their activities. That's their personal choice. What we have in there is nominal. It's not outrageous. I'm not part of that system, and that's just the way it is, so I'm not going to talk any further on that.
What do you mean by bling? I don't understand.
John, you're making him talk further about it.
No.
I'll take that back.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, we are going to move forward with item number 2, which is the Budget Ordinance Amendment CIP Fund 10 transfer, and Melissa Moore will present.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. The intent of the two budget amendments presented tonight is to earmark revenues generated from the sale of a town asset for future capital investments and to begin establishing a capital project fund that will support long-term planning and financial stability. The sale of the police department building was completed during this year, resulting in a reduction of capital assets owned by the town. Based on recommended practices from the North Carolina Local Government Commission, proceeds from that sale of capital assets should be reinvested into current or future capital projects that generate additional capital assets for the town. Transferring these funds to the capital project fund ensures that we are restricting them for future and current capital investments. Because these revenues were received during this current year, if they are not utilized or restricted before the end of the year, and revenues exceed expenditures, the funds will become part of the town's unassigned fund balance for next year. Under the town's fund balance policy, unassigned fund balance may only be used for natural disasters or weather events, long-term infrastructure disruptions impacting revenue, flexibility to respond to unplanned capital needs, personnel adjustments, or contracted services outside the adopted budget. If the town budgets the $1.1 million and this coming up fiscal year to support operating expenditures, it would require the inclusion of an appropriated fund balance revenue line in that amount. This would likely generate questions from the town auditors who conduct audits on behalf of the North Carolina State Treasurer and the Local Government Commission. Specifically, auditors would ask, what is the appropriated fund balance being used for? Under our current financial structure, we could not identify those funds as supporting capital expenditures because those expenditures have been removed from your general fund and moved to the capital project fund. There are no remaining capital investments budgeted in the general fund. As a result, the auditors would likely report to the LGC the town is using general fund balance to support reoccurring operations and would trigger a failed compliance test within the annual audit process. Additionally, the town adopted a fund balance policy during the March meeting that states, use of fund balance for reoccurring operations shall be limited to transitional situations and must include a plan to restore structural balance. Using these funds solely to reduce the tax rate or balance the operating budget does not meet the definition of a transitional situation. There is also the long-term concern of sustainability. If the funds were used to balance the budget this year, what revenue source will replace them next year? The LGC will not allow the town to continually deplete its fund balance without issuing warnings and findings. Those warnings, combined with audit findings demonstrating a reliance on fund balance for operation, creates red flags that can negatively impact the town's ability to qualify for grants and secure favorable interest rates on future loans. The recommendation to transfer the additional $2.475 million into the capital project fund is intended to restrict those funds exclusively for capital investments. This approach demonstrates the town is planning responsibly for future infrastructure and equipment needs while reducing the burden that may otherwise fall on taxpayers in future years. Establishing and maintaining a capital reserve also allows the town to build a stable funding sources for future projects, prioritize anticipated capital expenditures, improve long-term financing forecasting, and better position the town for future infrastructure planning. Capital projects are designed for the capital project funds are designed for the acquisition of construction of major capital facilities. Fund 80 is established as a capital project fund and will be used exclusively for capital improvements. This restricts this restriction restricts it further than your general fund. Currently, you have a balance in the capital reserve fund of just a little over $1.3 million. This January, we completed a transfer of $317,000, so your current balance is just over $1.6 million. In your proposed budget, you're going to spend $1.26875, $1,268,750. Your remaining balance at the end of next fiscal year, if you make no transfers or investments into that fund, is going to leave you at $356,000. So the town is requesting that we transfer the 2.475 to establish a capital improvement plan to ensure the long-term capital investments are identified, planned, and implemented in a fiscally responsible manner. The approach helps reduce the likelihood that taxpayers will face significant unexpected financial demands related to capital equipment, facilities, or infrastructure needs. This transfer established a baseline investment in the capital improvement fund, formally earmarking these resources for capital needs. The town is currently developing a capital improvement plan that is expected to project capital needs up to 20 years in the future once fully implemented. As with any planning document, projects and priorities may be added, modified, or removed as the town continues to grow and evolve. If you have any questions about it, I'll be happy to answer them.
Question.
Okay.
So the 2.475 that we're talking about, that's the number, right? That's from what we used to, what we received from selling the police department.
No.
Okay, that's not. All right, what,
1.176 is the police department. It's 2.475.
Which is a later budget amendment. Right now, we're talking about the 2.475.
So we set the bar at 85%. Essentially, that 2.475 is over the 85% that we want to have set aside.
and what was in excess of the 85%?
Yeah.
Okay, I just got it reversed in my head. Okay, I just want to make sure that's what it was. What was already in excess of the 85%, and then we're getting ready to talk about the other. Okay, thank you.
When did we approve the fund balance policy?
March.
Okay. So this is a new policy that we've set up. Fund balance as a whole is unforeseen overages for the town. We budget something like we talked about earlier, whether it's staff that maybe quits throughout a part of the year or a project that comes in under budget that we didn't know about. There are certain things, or maybe we have a revenue that comes in way higher than we anticipated. We make projections based on very strategic numbers and guidance from outside sources. We are not allowed to say, just because we did one thing one year, this is what we're guaranteed to do the next year. They look at trends as a whole, and we have caps to certain things that we take in. So good for us if we ever have overages. It's not intentional, it's not an oversight, it's just the way the world works. What we're doing here is saying, rather than next year us have to look at you guys and say, we're now going to have to raise your taxes because we need to put in a new police department, or we have to redo a building somewhere that fell apart, got hit by lightning, whatever. Instead of us looking at you as citizens and saying, we need to dig into your pocket again to pay for these things, we're taking these unforeseen overages and using them to be able to fund these projects down the road. And it's not just this year or next year. We're trying to make a plan for years out. So I think that's the big misunderstanding is this is a brand new policy that we have. So when we talk about stuff from last year to this year, we talk about the police department, which we will in a minute. These are not numbers that we had last year. This is not something we could have put back into the budget. We didn't sell the police department until November and probably didn't collect funds until maybe December or January. So it's a new thing. Yes, it goes into our account this year, but it was never part of our budget for last year. And we can't go in and just say in January or February, well, we now have this money, so we need to adjust the budget as a whole and how we're going to take into consideration what we spend and how we spend it. The 85% is what the percentage of our general fund expenditures that we want to have set aside, rainy day fund. And this is what Kyle kind of discussed too. if you have a savings account, you don't live out of your savings account. Your savings account is there so that if you need to tap into it, you can for vital things. If we're paying anybody's payroll over and over and over every year out of that fund balance account, out of our reserves, eventually it's not there, and when something happens, we can't pay for it, and that turns around and comes back to you guys because we're going to have to bring that money in from somewhere. So the way that this is set up and the way that the policy is set up is actually a beautiful thing because it's unforeseen extras that we're taking, that we're setting aside, so we're not double tapping you next year. We're saying, this job came in under $40,000, that's gonna go in this reserve account, and at some point we start moving money into the capital improvement account when we've exceeded that 85% threshold of reserve. We can start moving money into capital improvements so that we have that money to spend on things that we need. Did I explain that? Good?
You did an excellent job.
And some people have said also, like, there was several questions about why this money's here now and we didn't know it was coming or whatever. But I mean, maybe this wasn't like everybody's knowledge, but we thought we sold the police department probably about 3 different times. Like that we thought we were having money come in, and then the deal fell apart. So this has been a very unpredictable, source of income that we weren't sure, and it was very challenging to decide where it was going to be falling on our budget cycle.
In here 3 years, you were selling the police department for 3
Yes,
years.
okay.
But we do have the cash in the bank now.
We do have the cash in the bank now.
Finally.
Okay, do we have, you need a consensus?
I have a question. Do you have an estimate of what our unrestricted general fund balance will be at the conclusion of this fiscal year?
I can give you an estimate, but we're not going to collect revenue for the rest, or not a significant amount of revenue for May and June, and our expenditures may significantly outperform those revenues. So,
No, I appreciate the cash flow, and we collect most of our money somewhere in January, right? Or at least half of that money. And sales tax is always lagging. So at close of business last year, it was 18 million total, 16 million unrestricted?
yes.
All right. So I would say that we aren't going to run we may run a surplus, but we're probably not going to run a deficit this year?
I would not anticipate a deficit. I would not anticipate the surplus you had either last year.
Right. Historically, we've had surpluses, and they've ranged from $1 million to $3 million. And so we know we're not going to have to pay out of that fund for a deficit, pretty much. We're pretty comfortable about that. So
That is correct.
the unrestricted fund balance will be 16-ish. And what you're saying is that 2.475 will take that down to 13 and change, and that 13 represents 85% of operating plus beach nourishment. Okay. Now, I heard you say that the money that's coming from the police department needs to be transferred into the capital improvement plan fund, and I totally agree with that. I think Fund 80 deserves that money because that's where it came from, sort of. I'm curious when you said that if we don't do that because of our policy, we'll be restricted in being able to do that in the future, so we should do it now. Yet,
So it will become part of unassigned fund balance. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying it's going to show in that number in the audit next year as unassigned fund balance until you make that decision next year.
right, so we could execute on a BOA. If we don't do it now, we could do it next year.
But I think that makes your revenues look overinflated when you clearly know you're going to go ahead and move it.
Well, and I have no problem with excuse me, the idea of using assets sold to pay for new assets. I'm just wondering whether we ought to have the CIP plan more clearly defined before we make the decision to move fund balance.
What more definition do you want?
Yeah, what's not
Okay,
fine?
so and I'm glad you asked that question because I have two versions of it, Kyle, and some of them, I had one from January's meeting, and one I think it was in March or April that you shared. And there are some numbers that were in January that aren't there now, and there are numbers now that weren't there in January. And there's $30 million for the multi-use path in there. There's a fire station in there. These are things that I believe them to be placeholders with, yet you also shared with us that we have a potential for a grant for the multi-use path. So I'm concerned that what we have in the CIP now has a lot of ambiguity, and I would prefer to work on it on a project-by-project basis and transfer monies accordingly using a BOA.
But, and I hear what you're saying, and with all due respect, there is projects that are developed for future capital improvement that may never come to fruition, that are identified as potential future needs. We'll take Fire Station 27, for example. That is a fire station that has been put forward by the fire chief as a future need out on Highway 17 based on potential growth that may occur. Having that identified in a CIP, the only way I can get a true cost of that is for me to go out and seek true cost. There's a dollar amount tied to that. The benefit of having it in a CIP is that now we have that documented in a plan, and if there's grant opportunity, future land acquisition that needs to occur, identifying it on future public facilities maps, that is where the benefit lies in having those things in CIP. Discrepancies in funding, that's refining different cost estimates. Cost estimates for multi-use path came from a planning document, and the segments didn't exactly match up to what the town had because it was a much larger regional project. But the CIP, from what is going to be funded in the next fiscal year, those are things that we want to have close known costs for. 5 years to have some of those known costs is a good target, in my opinion. Beyond 5 years, these are projects that are thought about, may be needed, may not be needed, but what Melissa and I certainly would prefer is to know that we have 2 fire engines that are going to need to be replaced at some point, and their existing lifespan may be 20 years, so therefore 15 years out, we have expenditures estimated, whatever that number may be, within a CIP. Having money in the CIP keeps those funds restricted. That does not mean that we are spending that money. Only when we come here to request that y'all fund the current year CIP is when that money becomes potentially obligated through the budget process.
Okay.
It's hard to develop a plan with no money if we don't have any guidance on where you're going to go. If there's going to be $356,000 left in there, how am I supposed to know what I can begin to plan for next year? Because I don't know if there's $9 million on the schedule, and I don't know right now, I don't have it in front of me. If there's $9 million on the schedule next year, how do we plan for next year? And then what is the impact of the following year? I mean, we need to be able to tell you, okay, 5 years down the road, there needs to be $10 million in here to cover all these expenditures, but it's kind of like the chicken and the egg, which came first? I mean, how can I develop a plan if I don't know how much money I can spend?
Over the last 6 months, and the town we've been talking about capital improvements, the capital needs for the next 20 years into the future once it's implemented. And as with any planning documents, projects are going to change. Priorities may be added. This council may all change. They may have a different outlook on what we need and when we need it, but we have to continue to move forward. We just can't sit back and wait for a crisis to happen. You can't sit back and we have to plan ahead. You have to prepare. Your budget has to be prepared carefully. CIPs need to be on a plan, and that's where we are not just, we're protecting the residents and future generations. We're protecting Mickey Tucker's great-great-great-grandchildren or Trudy Solomon's children, their great-great-grandchildren. It's generations to come. I've been here 58 years,
I agree. If we don't-
Someone planned
have a-
ahead
Yeah.
at some point in time, and that's where we are today. And hopefully, just with planning ahead, 20 years ago with the Beach Nourishment Fund, hopefully that's going to come into a reality within the next 6 months. We hopefully will be planning and getting bids for a beach. So capital improvement is so important, and we've all been talking about it for 6 months.
It's the future. You have to plan for the future.
Right. I absolutely agree. And I'm not averse to spending money on investments that make sense for our community, and there are a number of them. There's the kayak launch potential. There's a boardwalk on Soundside Park. Those are things that are there that we need to keep investing in those kinds of things simply because that is what our town is. My question is, if we move money now out of the fund balance into the CIP, that restricts that money only to CIPs. If we leave that money where it is right now and move it periodically to fund specific CIPs, is there any disadvantage to that?
I think the disadvantage is we're breaking our policy that we said we can't exceed 85% of the fund.
No, our policy is clear, 85%, no less than 85%. And
No
Mr.
less
Brewer
than,
and I had a discussion about that, and so that was, we did.
Yes, we did.
And it was
remember
enthusiastic,
fondly.
wasn't it? Anyway, so the minimum is 85, because if we go below 85, we have to come up with a plan to replenish it. If it's over 85, we're good to go. So the question I have for you, Ms. Moore, is moving the money now is advantageous for what reason?
It helps us develop a plan. We have some knowledge of what money's going to be in there going forward. We can at least plan for next fiscal year and then help develop what needs to go into the following fiscal years. If you are in control of the money, if the bottom falls out and you decide you need that money moved back into the general fund, we'll come back to you and do the exact same thing we're doing right now and say, we need you to move this money back from the capital improvement fund to the general fund. But you have no need for it now. It would allow us to develop a plan.
Well, if we were to develop a plan based upon a $3 million budget, regardless of where that money lives, I'm trying to figure out, by moving it.
I think having an earmark creates stability. Stability creates a sense of security. You're able to move forward. I'm ready to make the motion on this if anybody else is.
There's a consensus, right?
Well, I'm ready to do
You
that,
need a
too.
motion or a consensus?
One thing, though, just as a whole, like you said, we're sitting at a very small $356,000 in the capital improvement plan in the event that the budget continues with the capital improvement projects that we have planned for this coming year. That is not a lot of money, and I don't think any of us want to sit here every time and bounce money back and forth from one place to another. I feel like we kind of, when we set up this fund balance policy, did it with the intention of making sure that we gave money to the capital improvement fund so that we can do projects when they come up, not so that every time we're doing a project and we're trying to push stuff forward, like there are certain parts of these things that might be smaller amounts that staff is able to go ahead and do investigative work on and get balls rolling and start asking for grant funding, where if that money's not there for them to do some of that stuff, then how do we move forward? Like, we know we're going to put money into this account eventually, so why would we just continue to kick that can down the road? Like, that's a bad pattern that council has done for prior years, and I feel like we need to be in, if we set this fund up not to put money in it, then why is it there?
You know, I just keep reflecting back on June last year when this money was sacred and couldn't be touched, and today we're taking $3 million of it and moving it. And then I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. And I know I'm not supposed to have feelings. I'm supposed to be the accountant here, or the geek with the abacus. So, and I apologize for that. But to me, I don't see the benefit of doing this. And I'd like to see a much better and clearly defined cash flow requirement for CIPs. And I'd like to have council evaluate each individual project's funding transparently and fully, rather than just having a bolus of money that maybe we know how we should be spending it, but what about the next council or the one after? It becomes very easy to spend money when you have that money sitting there where you have to spend it. I just don't like the idea of. So that's how I feel.
Yeah.
You're entitled to feelings. Everybody's entitled to feelings. I've got lots of feelings. I don't think there was ever, we couldn't move the money. She said as well, too, though, we're not allowed to use that money for reoccurring operating expenses, which is the difference.
Which is just what we said last year.
And that's not just moving money around. That means we can't pay people's payroll out of our savings, which is a fair assumption. You don't, just like Kyle said, you don't pay your car payment every month out of your savings account. Eventually, it's not going to be there for you to make that payment anymore. So those are very different things.
One of the abilities out of that fund is to cover tax fluctuations. So it's in there.
Which fund are we referring to?
The general revenue fund balance is you're allowed to buy down the tax rate with that money, or not raise taxes and use that money. Wrightsville Beach did it 2 years ago. I mean,
That's not what we're talking about right now.
No, I know, but we said we couldn't do that because the money was somehow for emergencies, and now you're making, or council or staff is asking us to move it, and I'm just wondering what changed that last year we couldn't, and this year we can.
You helped write a fund balance policy and approved it.
February,
That's
that you
why.
requested.
No, that policy.
Andy, that is exactly
you
right.
requested it.
And it's
Exactly why. Don't say
85%
no.
You
or more.
pushed for us to have a fund balance policy.
Okay.
And you pushed for us to set this up.
Yep.
So this is your brainchild, so to speak, while staff worked on it prior, but you very heavily pushed for us to set up this policy. If we're gonna have funds and accounts, then we put money into them. We don't let them dwindle away and like hope that one day we can put money back in there.
All right, we all, sorry, we could talk about this all night. We all agreed that we were going to be financially stable town, and moving money around all the time creates a lot of questions in different ways. Creating the CIP, it puts it there, it's for capital improvement projects. We know where it's going. We know what it's supposed to be used for. That's what it's going to be used for. Do we want consensus, or do we want a vote?
We were asking for consensus tonight for it to be on the agenda. No.
Move to consent agenda. There's a normal process,
Alicia,
but that's
yes
up
or
to
no?
you.
Yes.
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 No.
All right. So the consensus, Mr.,
We don't have consensus.
we don't have consensus. So at this time, the item number, no, that was item number 2. Item number 3 doesn't,
Would not get
does not get
Yeah.
accepted. Item number 4, Budget Ordinance Amendment 305, North New River to sell from Fund 10 transfer. This would be the police department.
We've talked about it since January as a board, moving this from the general fund to the capital improvement.
So, I don't know how much further we need to get into if Mr. Pleil is not going to agree to put any money into a CIP fund. Do we even need to discuss this, or do we just take it up for a
I
vote?
think that's a little presumptuous, Mayor, and I apologize. I have one question. Are we using it for the 26, 27 CIPs that are already funded, or are we putting it into a reserve for future years' funding?
This becomes part of the reserve. No, We're not earmarking it for each year. Your balance would become a little over $3 million in that instance, or close to $3 million in that instance, and you draw down from that fund balance.
So the amount being transferred from the general fund, from this, the budgeted general fund, was at 1.2 million, Mr. Brewer?
$1,176,600.
No. In the budget, the transfer from the general revenue to the CIP was 1.2 million.
1051, but I mean, again, I could have an old printout. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so is this money that money, or is this money different money?
That's different money.
So the amount that's in the budget is coming out of general revenue, which is current tax dollars. And this money is going in additionally on top of that, which since we aren't going to use it in 26 or 26, 27, it'll be available to use in 27, 28. Or if we make some decisions in the budget year and want to add a CIP.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you want to answer any of the questions that were brought up about the police department? I think Miss
For the
Rita
sale of
Baumgardner
land, is
asked
that-
about the land.
Yeah, I did have those down. Where did I put it?
2 minutes.
So there was two other things. Land sold this last year would have been the police department building and land. That was brokered by the town. The buyer had a representative agent. And that's the only asset that would have, only land that would have been sold this year. And then the other thing, why I got a medical insurance for council. I can address that now, or we can wait later. Okay, medical insurance for council is funding set aside at the current level for current employees, to, not to exceed what we set aside for current employees for council insurance. Whether they use that for insurance, we don't audit those expenditures. It's just to provide that expenditure balance to council members. And we've talked about relabeling that and just fold it back into council salary per se, to make it more clear and transparent for that. Sorry about that. I did have a separate sheet of my notes.
Just for procedural, Budget Ordinance Amendment 305, North New River Sale Fund 10 transfer, would there been consensus from Trudy to move it?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And yes, Mayor, I do agree, because that's the appropriate way to do that, asset to asset.
There is consensus to move Fund Ordinance from the 305 to Fund 80.
Yes.
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 Next item, Budget Ordinance Amendment NCDOT Paving Project Fund 10 transfer.
Hold up, Mayor, did you do both of those?
We did. There was consensus on both.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. In collaboration with NCDOT, the town entered into a contract to complete a paving project for designated streets within Pleasant Cove, Sandy Ridge, and the canal areas. As part of the agreement, the town is required to submit the payment up front based on NCDOT estimated cost. Prior to starting the work, with the understanding that the town will be responsible for any additional costs incurred beyond the original estimate, the streets selected for this project were identified based on their PCI ratings in accordance with the pavement condition survey. Upon completion of the project, we received a final invoice at an overage amount of $85,369.31. Before you is a budget ordinance amendment to pull the funds from Fund 10, Fund Reserve, to be moved to the maintenance and repair of streets, budget to cover the remaining project costs. I'm asking for consensus on this tonight.
Can I ask a question? You said the project is complete?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's a section of West Ridge that isn't. Is that been?
It was not the entire portion out there, sir.
Okay, so residents have come to me and said that, had asked that question, why isn't the rest of the street done? I was working under the assumption that they were going to do it in the spring, and I think, Mr. Brewer, you may have even said that to one of the residents
Yeah, and
recently.
that's, if I'm not
That's a
mistaken.
different project.
It's on the next project coming up.
Oh, so it's not part of this?
No.
So this was a project where you identified certain streets that were like what's the,
PCI.
thank you, the PCI was.
Very low. Our lowest one was 0 and
but
the
it
highest was 40.
Yeah, so this street could be really low, but the street
Next to it could be
maybe
better.
not.
Yes.
And but this affected multiple areas across town, but it wasn't based on it trying to make it one town area complete or whatever. It was just addressing the lowest PCI, those streets in our town to make sure we had raised the standards on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. And it ran over budget.
Yes, ma'am. $85,369.31.
And I will note, the arrangement with DOT provides some benefits back to the town. I think it's worthy of bringing this back up because it's been a little bit since we've formalized this partnership. So DOT bids these projects on a county-wide basis, part of their county resurfacing project. So we get the benefits of mobilization and material cost reductions based on much larger projects. We're able to essentially piggyback. The caveat is that when we send them the road segments to be completed, they do their best to do a preliminary cost estimate. We have to cut a check up front for it. Then they bid the project, do the work, and then if there is overage, then we have to pay it. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first time we've had to pay any overage. And,
Yes, sir.
Have we ever gotten money back from DOT?
No, sir. Normally it's breaking even.
But there is, again, the benefit of, and I don't have this evaluation in front of me, but there's the benefit of project bid out, contractor selection, construction oversight, et cetera. I hate to even bring it up, but several years ago, the town had contracted out this project. It was a horrible mess. With an independent contractor. And again, we made this decision several years ago in order to provide some consistency, quality of roadway construction, et cetera. So just wanted to
So
kind
in
of give
some
that.
senses, we've saved money on the
Well,
project.
I can't guarantee, not a guaranteeing on that,
It's
but
definitely less headache than that other project.
it is. And they're extremely efficient, almost to a fault, because sometimes they come in and do the project, we don't even know they're here, but.
You're much more professional.
They did surprise us, yes.
Yeah, sure.
So, Mr. Brewer, do we have Powell bill money that
No, sir.
we can't use Powell bill?
No, sir. Well, if we had the money, we could, but.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
this upcoming year's Powell bill could be used for.
That's what will go to the next contract, yes, sir.
Okay, and the remaining part of Sandy Ridge there is already budgeted and paid for?
It has been budgeted, and I'm not sure if we have actually sent them any money yet. But we have got the estimates back for them.
Is it in the budget or in the 25-26 budget?
I would have to look.
Yeah,
I
with
can't tell you right off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
I would assume within the Powell bill expenditure for it, but that's covering North Ridge to East Ridge, West Ridge to Sandy, North Harbor to Sunset. These are
Yes, yes, sir.
South Harbor to Sunset, Twilight to North Harbor, Sunset to South Topsail, Royal Palm Ave to J.H. Batts Road, 2nd Street to North New River, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th to North New River.
And the budget for that? I'm sorry, Kyle.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this
Yeah,
later.
sure.
Yeah. Do we have consensus to move forward with the item as
It's
Chris
the-
Carter has presented?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Next item is committee board appointments.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to, I don't know whether it's making a motion or just like to bring something up regarding our PSET committee. Gone to a few of the committee meetings, And
Speaking the.
oh, sorry. I've gone to a few of the community meetings, and it seems that some of the community members are basically questioning what their total purpose is. And I think at this point, if we ask staff to look into the committee engagement on the purpose of this committee, I think it would be advisable.
So as far as you're saying to hold off on?
Yes, I would hold off on the openings on PSET until we can have staff check out, further aspects of the committee, because a lot of the committee members are not sure of exactly what they should be doing, I guess.
Kyle, you want to say anything?
I mean, again, after the last PSET committee, I think Des was in here. I don't know if she is. There seems to be inconsistent expectations of the committee, even though that council has applied expectations. So there's been, I think, confusion going on in the committee meetings. I was not at the last one, but I think committee members are a little confused. Staff certainly is confused. They're trying to deliver on what those expectations are that have been presented back from council. So I think that's where the general discussion had come in. I've talked to Frank a little bit about this, and I've met with Des and the committee on multiple times since their inception, and there's just consistent confusion as to what they really should be doing. So
the public knows what we're talking about. When we say PSET, it's special events. So it was basically created when the town did Surf City Live, and when there was Ocean Fest in the park. So tickety events was one thing that special events this committee did. So is there consensus to hold off on voting for PSET tonight?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll get information and bring that back to you probably at the next work session.
Okay. Andy, was there consensus to hold off on PSET?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine, thanks.
So in front of you is the Board of Adjustments, Beautification, and Parks Rec, and the Planning Board, and
these are terms that are expiring June 30th. So we do advertise to let folks apply that are interested, new folks, and then we also speak with existing members to find out if they're interested in staying on the committee. So you'll see on your ballot in front of you, you've got, shows you your existing members that would like to be considered for reappointment, and your new applicants, which you have received their applications for. And on the planning board, as before, there's one full, one alternate. So if you could indicate which one you would like for which.
Oh, I don't think I did that. Alicia and I did
Really quick, really quick.
Sorry. Oh.
You need
You
to
gotta
say what you want for
specify
each one.
which ones. Yeah, got it.
Carla's calculating. Is James still here? James Horn? No. He just walked out. Ashley's here. So these posters over here, and I see a couple that was here last night, and I see Miss Steph that was here last night for.
I'm gonna step out for a second.
Sure. For the hurricane
the
preparedness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there is some pamphlets back there on the side table concerning hurricane preparedness. Feel free to
This
take
is the one
one.
I filled out already, Kyle, but I didn't have to.
They have been here 3 hours.
15-minute recess while they're tabulating.
So we're going to take a 2-minute just little recess and run to the bathroom. If anyone has to go, feel free. We're coming right back. They're going to All right. Item number 8. Oh, no, wait. Carla's got to give her results. I'm sorry. Results, Carla.
Are we in a hurry to get out of here?
Okay. Planning Board, Mike Ellis, full member, Damian Buchanan as your alternate. Parks and Recreation, Donna Martin Lugens, Elizabeth Duplago, and Chad Clark. Board of Adjustment, Sheridan Conklin, Peter Sloan, Will Tate. Beautification, Sandy Monroe and Robert Batchelor. And that was it. So all of that will go to consent agenda for June. And they'll start in July.
Thank you.
Carla.
All right. Number 8 is Jeremy Smith. Our comprehensive land use plan implementation update. And Renee had, I think Renee had to,
Yes, ma'am.
our
Chairwoman,
planning director, or planning chair was here, Renee Rhodes.
she did not intend this meeting to go as long as it is and had a prior obligation, and I told her I could handle it on behalf of the planning board. So before you, item 8 is a new process identified in the 25-26 strategic plan, and it has an annual update from the planning board and community development on current status of comprehensive land use plan implementation. And just to provide the board and the public on why we have a comprehensive land use plan is required for 2 reasons. Under General Statutes 160D, municipalities that exercise zoning and land use authority are required to adopt and maintain a comprehensive land use plan so that we can provide reasonable basis for zoning and land use decisions. We are also a coastal community, so under the CAMA, or Coastal Area Management Act, we are required to maintain a comprehensive land use plan that consists of the guidelines and standards established by the North Carolina Coastal Resource Commission and is annually updated every 5 to 10 years. Our current comprehensive land use plan was updated in February 2023 and is due for an update in the fiscal year of 27-28. However, that may be impacted by our current efforts on bike and ped plan update and downtown master planning. With that said, I'm going to touch on some highlights with the comprehensive land use plan, areas that it calls out for projects and initiatives that the town achieves throughout the life of the comprehensive land use plan. Some of these predate this current fiscal year. They predate my time with the town. So I do not attempt to take credit for them, but there are accomplishments by the town as a whole. In regards to ordinances and regulatory updates, the town has adopted a new revised zoning and subdivision ordinances in November of 2024. We have adopted technical specifications, and that was in November of 2025. Within the land use plan, there are 5 categories that define goals and policies that the town uses to make decisions, not just for land use, but for growth management. Those cover coastal resiliency and hazard mitigation, public access and recreation, water quality and environmental protection, infrastructure and transportation. I believe that was the 5. I apologize. And growth management and planning and long-range planning initiatives. In the areas of coastal resiliency, we've adopted new FEMA flood maps. And with that adoption, we updated our model flood development ordinance, which included a 2-foot freeboard, which exceeds minimum federal requirements. We've also updated our coastal forest overlay district standards, and we continue to participate in the Southeastern Hazard Mitigation Plan, most recently the annual update for that project that was presented to the board earlier this year. Under public access and recreation, we continue our beach access and ADA accessibility improvements. We monitor beach parking demand and capacity. We are under current initiatives to looking at a town lighting plan as it curtails to beach and the turtle protection and the island overall.
We continue with educational signage for dune protection and overall environmental stewardship. In regards to water quality and environmental protection, we continue with our stormwater and water quality projects and grants. We continue advancing the projects that we have funded by the RCPP program. That's the Regional Conservation Partnership Programs. Again, our ongoing stormwater management implementation and projects throughout the town. In regards to environmental protection, recently we've been coordinating with the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission on oyster leasing and shoreline protection initiatives. Future initiatives for the planning board are looking at tree preservation and open space, as well as clarifications in our current zoning districts, and that will impact those areas of environmental protection and water quality. In regards to infrastructure and transportation, we have ongoing wastewater and utility planning. We have complete multiple sections of sidewalk, and we continue on with our multi-use path project. We continue to seek grant funding securing pedestrian safety improvements. Most recently, our bicycle and pedestrian plan update grant we received, and we are in the engineering and design for some potential safety flashing lights at some of our crosswalks on North New River and South Shore. Long-range planning initiatives. As part of this recent budget process, we've identified the downtown master plan as a project over the next 2 years. Last month at the workshop, I presented our job growth corridor initiative. I am taking that back to the planning board in June for some revisions and some refresh, and I will bring that forward to the board later this summer. Again, under the long-range planning initiatives, future initiatives identified in the current strategic plan are tree preservation and looking at revising our subdivision ordinance, and specifically our zoning districts for more clarity and consistency. One additional item you'll see on your staff report is the past land use decisions this board has made in the fiscal year 25-26, and you will find that it demonstrates a continued support of the Campbell Land Use Plan's future land use designation, in that the majority of the land use decisions were supported by the future land use map. Only on 2 occasions was the future land use map required an update because it was different than what this board decided on from a rezoning standpoint. Overall takeaway of what we are doing is that the town continues investing in our resiliency, infrastructure, environmental stewardship, transportation improvements, long-range planning, ordinance modernization, and seeking grants for funding opportunities. With that said, I hopefully represent the planning board well and be happy to answer any questions the board may have. From this, we will be posting the updated policy goals and matrix as an annual report on the town's website, so it'll be available for anyone to review at any time. Thank you. All right.
Very good. Have any questions?
I've got one quick,
sir.
2 quick questions. The Island Town Center concept, zoning within, we have a rough idea where this is going to be?
Yes, it is our best. If you look at our future land use map, it is the areas identified for Island Town Center.
Okay, so.
And that's, you'll often hear using it almost interchangeably, downtown master plan, Island Town Center master plan.
So I can use that map?
Yes.
All right.
And I can provide you with an updated map that specifically shows that boundary, and I believe we do have it on the website too.
Right, so I can rely on that. That's great.
Yes, sir.
And within that, the effort will be to have it all C1 zoned?
Potentially. That'll be work that we'd make with the steering committee, this board, the planning board, and what that plan recommends and asks the town to do.
And just quick update, the right-of-way ordinance enforcement, I guess that's your department, maybe it's not the right time to ask it. We had a whole system set up, stage 1, stage 2, or...
Correct. I'll fall back on being the new guy, and
the plan is still in place. Implementation, has been delayed. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, I guess. And we've had transition with staff, et cetera. And now we have some major utility projects that are going on. I think it's something we certainly can talk about. But it is something that.
There was a lot of enthusiasm for it early on. I remember working with Scott, and then it kind of just died on the vine. But that's the site triangle is the part that concerns me the most.
It is something that we do daily now on daily inspections and enforcement. If we see things that are wrongfully in the right of way, we pursue it now. We don't look at a mass grab. We pursue it there and send the.
So Matt's doing some enforcement. Oh,
100%.
Great.
And we are prepared to do it as we move forward with the waterline resiliency project and the future multi-use path on North Shore.
Yeah, the partnership between obviously Jeremy's leadership, but also our building inspectors who work under Jeremy and who are doing COs and the zoning finals. We're able to catch things early, like irrigation and landscaping.
Big boulders.
The big boulders, yeah, and then obviously the maturity of the parking management program, I think, has reduced a lot of concerns about right-of-way blockage from errant parking, which I think was a big provocateur of people putting things in the right-of-way, was simply just
wait till this weekend.
Just to keep people off of their property.
It is an ongoing initiative internally. While we may not be hitting the campaigned areas, it is an on-day daily duty.
Good.
So we're referring to the Island Town Center as ITC. That's our lingo now. Okay.
What would you like to call it?
Well, in some of the documentation still says CBD, and I think
Yes.
that was what.
So
Central
CBD
Business District.
relates to that central business district, and that
I know, but it's still in here, and so I just wanted to, let's just make sure we're.
and that ties to when the comprehensive land use plan was updated. It called it central business district.
I know.
Yeah. So and that is the zoning district. C1 is the central business district. Most communities with a main town, a main street town, they do say downtown plan, but
Yeah.
this is Surf Cities, and I think you have an opportunity to make it your own and call it the Island Town Center.
Island Town Center. I think we're good with ITC.
I think that's tourist friendly, right?
Yeah. So, there is a steering committee. Is that all organized or
Not
still? Okay.
Or will be a part of that.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, you will lead else identifying that group.
Okay. We're good. Thank you.
Yeah, basically, when budgets go into effect where this project has, then Jeremy will then put a request for qualifications out there, interview planning firms to help lead the process, and all during that process is identification and appointment of steering committees.
And there's a lot of firms, I get weekly calls of, hey, we hear you're doing this. There are a lot of consultants that want to participate in this because it has an opportunity to be bold and stand out among our coastal communities. So just because of the timing of everything else we have going into it. So
Thanks, Jeremy.
yeah, we'll have that posted tomorrow morning, the comprehensive land use plan implementation update. It'll be on the website.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
job. Do you need consensus or you're good? Okay.
No, just the
Okay.
presentation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 9 is the Eastern Carolina cancel withdrawal, and I think Kyle is going to present this.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, council. This item is unfortunately in front of you in regards to some organizational deficiencies, I should say. So from the baseline, councils of governments were formed through federal authorization that ultimately was established to help provide a linkage between federal government and local governments. And councils of government can range from different services being provided. Typically, their primary services are services geared towards aging. You might see your Meals on Wheels that are focused on this, or providing senior services, et cetera. Councils of government can also serve as regional transportation collaborators, and provide other local government services, and can be a technical assistance to jurisdictions within. Thankfully for Surf City, the majority of our jurisdiction falls within the Cape Fear Council of Governments, who has maintained a consistent posture, provides quality services, and we are familiar with their services as we have used them in the past. The most recent, they did the evaluation of the charter, did the matrix, and ultimately presented that back to the board. That's typically a service that they will provide at very reduced cost to a member jurisdiction. The portion of Surf City that is covered under the Eastern Carolina Council of Governments is the Onslow County portion. So our canal area essentially, and we don't receive a lot of services out of them, so there's not going to be a huge gap in services being provided, and this will force mostly regional transportation efforts to be either folded into Cape Fear or into the next Council of Government North. That's not anything that we need to figure out. Due to the financial issues with the Eastern Carolina Council of Governments, member jurisdictions and core member jurisdictions have been withdrawing from the organization. Primary Craven County, Onslow County, et cetera. Our annual contribution for dues and subscription to this organization is $300. So it might be some change tied to it too, but essentially the organization as we know it is most likely not going to exist anymore, and this is a formality in order for the town to say, hey, we're pulling out, we're going to give you this notice according to statute, and it requires action to be taken by this board. So, and I will prepare a letter in accordance with the bylaws and get that sent out to all the other member jurisdictions. But yeah, I started receiving letters from Wayne County and Craven County, and they just kept coming in, so.
I appreciate, I wouldn't mind speaking, but I appreciate you including the letters from the other municipalities, counties and such that are withdrawing. I've been attending these meetings on the appointed Thursday nights and driving back and forth to Newbern to attend the ECC meetings for, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years? I don't know. There might be 10 people at this meeting, maybe, for the whole Eastern Carolina Council, and maybe 2 people dial in online. But yes, they have struggled with their leadership, and then it eventually led to some financial issues. And not that I didn't, enjoy meeting people, and it was a networking opportunity, I guess, but I do know that our town hasn't received a lot of benefits from it. Like, there were so many topics that we spent time on in our meetings that were more at a county level, and if we had, a senior center and things like that, if that's what, so.
But I would be remiss because we did apply through a grant for
Yes,
them
there
and
was a
got
grant.
some economic development
Yes.
professional services for free to the town that we evaluated the Island Town Center, talked to business owners, got input, again, another valuable tool for us to include into the background data for development of that plan. So I'd say we probably got more than what we've paid into.
Probably, yeah.
A good deal, as
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
would be.
But I've just seen that organization really suffer, so. And I wanted to comment that, like, I would think it was valuable that Surf City dedicated any time and energy and effort to it to represent our Onslow residents, and that I was proud to represent and do that, and it's no reflection, but I was seeing so many municipalities just not show up and participate and not give them, any credit for what they were there for. It just didn't go well, so.
Yeah,
And
consensus.
the Cape Fear is way more robust.
Sure.
Yes.
We were not losing
You are
services.
more than welcome to go with us to.
I will go to Cape Fear. Yeah, I don't have to drive to Newbern anymore. That's okay.
And the board can
Yes.
vote on it, or they can move it in consensus. If you vote on it, we'll send the letter tomorrow. So that's up to you.
Make a motion, we send a letter.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a motion to send a letter.
I'll second.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed, same sign. Okay, item number 10 is cancel meeting times. This has been We changed cancel meeting times to adjust attendance, hopefully that we would get more attendance at some of the meetings. And Carla, were you keeping attendance?
We did, just by counting folks in the audience at each meeting. It varied a little bit as far as numbers you see are at the beginning of the meeting. As you can imagine, meetings that have gone on like this one, we have we lose a few, yeah. But the numbers are in front of you for you to decide. It was brought, made the decision at the end of last year to do a 6-month trial basis to hopefully, again, gain more attendance and in response to public's questioning that. And so it's now on your agenda we have our date set through June. So if you make any changes tonight, this would apply starting to the July 7th meeting, I believe. The first meeting in July.
Are we talking about taking it and putting it back to what it was? Is that the decision?
That would be up to us.
Discussion, yeah.
Well,
That'd be the decision.
Hugh, you got any suggestions?
So far, I've not been unhappy with the Tuesday night regular meetings. Maybe move it back 30 minutes or an hour, just because they do get to run a little long for staff and even residents. Workshop. Where did I see the workshop numbers? Is that?
That's the same thing.
Second
one, yeah.
Yes,
It's
the second.
15th, the 19th, the 19th. Yeah, they're lower.
Didn't seem like a whole lot changed on those.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking we might.
we had
I'm thinking we might move those back to the daytime.
We had
but
32 people.
Leave it on Thursday.
We had 32 people show up this evening on the start of the meeting, and now we're down to 11. And I know it's a long meeting, but I mean, I've noticed a lot of people will come to the meeting, and then after public comment or after they hear a couple things, then they just walk out, and it breaks it down to like tonight.
I think the purpose of it was to be able to give people an opportunity to speak at public comment. So if they are coming, I know it's unfortunate if we don't get them to stay the whole time, but it does give them the opportunity to come and speak, and that's kind of what everybody asked for. I don't mind keeping it the way it is, but I would say the same, like, I know we had a lot of people here tonight for the workshop. Maybe keep it the same for both for another couple months, but really look at the workshops, because I feel like depending on what the material is, they don't seem to. But not do them at 9, maybe just do the workshop at 4:30. I don't know. Or does that mess you up on Thursdays? Do you guys have stuff in the afternoons on Thursdays for workshops?
Depends on what
Parties, that's it. So this is it.
I
No, I didn't think about it Thursday.
We serve at the pleasure of the board.
We're doing it at night, so, yeah.
Does that interfere with planning?
Thursdays are fine for
Thursdays are
the
fine?
third Thursday.
The third Thursday?
Mhm.
This has been an issue since, even before I was on council, something I even fussed about, that I wanted to have the meeting, and I don't, have the normal 9 to 5 job. Anyway, so, if we did this because the public said that it wasn't convenient, they couldn't show up. And so, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. And we're still gonna meet, we're still gonna, I'm fine with keeping it at 6. It doesn't, I do feel really bad. It is 9:20, and there are staff people here who have already worked in their offices here all day. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. Well, I'm not talking about the fire, no. Frank and.
And thanks to the
Ashley,
citizens that have stuck it
James.
out too,
I
because this
know.
was a long one.
Jeremy,
So.
I know that's the part that I'm concerned about, is our staff, people who've worked all day and they're staying here late at night to be part of the meeting, because we have a lot more flexible schedules. Cindy's raising her hand.
The reason you had them later is for people to make public comment. Could you have the public comments at the end?
Later.
We actually did change that.
We did.
Mhm. We actually did change that. We have one at the beginning now and one at the end for your regular council meetings.
Council meetings, the first Tuesdays.
Mhm.
We do have 2 public comment times on the council, on the regular first Tuesday meetings.
I just think that sometimes people will come up for public comment, they'll do their comment, they're not here to hear what the outcome of that comment will be, they leave. So how do you know how your comment was answered if you're not here?
Why do you care?
Well, they care.
For everybody, but the couple behind me, I heard him tell her whispering, she was ready to go, and he said, and she said, let's go and we'll watch the rest of it on television.
Yeah.
I don't know that
Yeah.
everybody, but that's.
Yeah.
work and I have to travel to get here. And there's no way, if it's at 4:30, I can't get off early enough to get here.
I will add,
That's prevent people that work.
Well,
Yeah.
I think there was a piece of discussion, can we keep Tuesdays at 6 o'clock, the first Tuesdays, but could maybe the third Thursdays move up a little? And the flow is a little different.
Meetings have gone on is because of the budget to start off with. I mean, normally your meetings are a lot shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last couple months, everybody's here because of the budget.
Yeah, there's a high attendance during
You can see,
during
you can
budget
see it on
times.
the numbers, which meetings are the budget meetings.
and I will add, because we did hear a lot about, the working people being able to get here, but we do have a different crowd because now the ones that were here at 4:30, they have kids, families, other things
not
going on.
coming.
And
They tell
I've
me.
heard a lot of complaint
Yes.
personally, because they do tell me, because I take the minutes and do the
hear that
things,
complaint
that
too.
they're upset that now they can't attend.
It's
so.
dinner time.
It's their family time and putting
Yeah.
kids to
So
bed.
I do see
Maybe
both of
look
those.
into doing the Tuesdays,
You're
keeping
welcome.
them at
You can come
6,
work.
and then maybe doing the workshops at 4:30, and then we can everybody gets a chance to be here for something.
You're still gonna rule out the people that have children and they have either homework or dinner at 6 o'clock. So
Well,
I
if we
think
move it back to
changing
4:30 on
Yeah.
Thursdays.
Change
The
it
work
from there back
sessions.
to, and get away from 6 o'clock because, and then our staff has to stay here till like, tonight.
We feel bad about that. That's the only part.
Andy, you're quiet. What you got?
I like 6 o'clock for both. I think consistency keeps me on track. I'm getting older.
All right, so we're not going to have consensus to change anything.
That's right.
So, with that being said, does y'all want to do any type of public comment? You have any?
I'm pretty tired, and I appreciate the 11 of you that stayed. I think we got a lot done. We have one more round on June 5th to finish this up. I think we have a couple open questions. Anybody have comments, questions, further recommendations about the budget? Mr. Brewer's available, the council members are all available, the mayor's available. Just don't send an email to Carla, because she'll just send it to the rest of us, so.
I just wanted to, I've heard June 5th multiple times. It's June
Henry, just
2nd.
correct that. It's
I
June
just don't want to
2nd.
confuse anybody.
I was just
you know?
trying to make it easier for us.
That's
okay?
Friday, though, so that's
not
not
be
easy.
here on
Sorry about that. June 2nd, it's Tuesday, and it's at 6 o'clock, so, but anyway, we're working hard, and hope you appreciate the effort, and sorry it's 9:30, and I feel I'm partly responsible for that.
Andy, I just want you to know that I care about your feelings.
I'm good. Just,
We do too.
we're doing a Memorial Day.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
We're doing a Memorial Day ceremony tomorrow.
Oh, yes, tomorrow morning at 9
9
o'clock
o'clock.
at Soundside. We're having our Memorial Day ceremony. Please join us.
I think that was the, what we moved up.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Well, either,
We have
yeah.
a
You make that
motion, do we have a
We'll all
second?
make that
Yeah.
motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.